What happens when your family turns on you and leaves you fighting for your life? Emily had just earned her promotion at work, a dream realized after years of hard work and sacrifice. A simple social media post celebrating her success turned into something she never expected: a phone call from her estranged mother. Suddenly, after 8 years of silence, they wanted to celebrate. But there was a catch. It wasn't about Emily's success, it was about Ashley. Stay tuned to see how Emily uncovers a twisted betrayal and finally chooses to take control of her life. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories. I never imagined that something as simple as a photo could turn my life upside down, but that's exactly what happened last Saturday. There I was, standing next to Mr. Olivier, the company director, both of us smiling as he shook my hand. The caption read, "Finally got that promotion. Hard work pays off. Career milestone." See. It seemed like just another career update to share on social media, a small personal victory I didn't think much about. Little did I know how wrong I was. My name is Emily, and at 24, I had finally gotten my first big break at Marshall & Associates. I'd worked my way up from an entry-level manager to department head. It wasn't easy. I spent 4 years working overtime, giving countless presentations, and drinking more coffee than I care to admit. But I did it on my own, and that meant everything to me. I was still basking in the excitement of my promotion when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized it instantly. My mother. 8 years of silence, and now, suddenly, she was calling me. My hand trembled as I stared at the screen. "Hello?" I answered, my voice coming out softer than I wanted. "Emily, sweetheart." My mother's voice exactly as I remembered, sweet but hollow. It was the tone she used when she wanted something. "Your father and I just saw your post. We're so proud of you." Proud. That word hit me like a slap. Where had their pride been when I needed it most? "Thanks," I said, gripping the edge of my desk, trying to steady myself. "We should celebrate. Why don't you come over this weekend? We can throw a proper party for you. The whole family would love to see how successful you've become." The whole family. That meant Ashley, my younger sister, the favorite, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I swallowed, my throat tightening. "I'll think about it," I managed to say. "Please, darling, we've missed you so much. It's time to put the past behind us, don't you think?" After we hung up, I sat there, heart pounding. I stared blankly at my desk, trying to calm the storm inside me. 8 years of silence broken by a single social media post. 8 years since I walked out of that house, vowing never to return. 8 years of building a life without them. My hand brushed against the medical alert bracelet on my wrist, the one that warned of my severe peanut allergy. The same allergy my parents had treated like an inconvenience, and Ashley had mocked with her cruel jokes. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. Family is who treats you like family, not just who shares your blood. Grandma had been my real parent. Over the past 8 years, she'd been there for me, supporting me through college, believing in me when no one else did. The words, "proud of you," repeated in my head, and I couldn't help but wonder how those words felt so empty coming from my parents, yet so full of love from Grandma. I glanced at the photo on my desk, me and Grandma at my college graduation. She was smiling, genuinely proud of me, not the hollow pride my parents were suddenly offering. That phone call from Mom had brought everything rushing back. All the old wounds I had tried to bury, and they hurt just as much as they did back then. Ashley, just 4 years younger than me, had always been the shining star of the family. From the moment she was born, everything had revolved around her. I wore clothes from discount stores while Ashley got designer outfits. My parents used expensive cameras to capture her every moment, while my school achievements were shoved into drawers, forgotten. I remember my 11th birthday so clearly. I had been hoping for an art set. I'd seen a simple kit with colored pencils and a sketchbook. It wasn't anything fancy. Instead, I got a pack of number 2 pencils. "You need these for school anyway," Mom said. That same year, for Ashley's 8th birthday, my parents turned the entire backyard into a Disney Princess Wonderland, complete with a hired Cinderella. "Ashley's just more artistic," Mom would say when relatives questioned why they treated us so differently. She needs proper tools to develop her talent. I still remember Aunt Marjorie speaking up at a family dinner. Children should be loved equally. This isn't right. Mom waved her off like it was nothing. Oh, Marjorie, you don't have kids. You wouldn't understand. Our girls are just different. Ashley has real potential. Emily is, well, Emily is just ordinary. We're being realistic about their abilities. The worst part wasn't the gifts or the parties. It was how they made me feel, like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't matter. When I won first place in a state math competition, I expected a congratulations from my mom. Instead, she said, "That's nice, dear, but did you see Ashley's painting? It's displayed in the school hallway." My grandmother saw through it all. "This isn't right, Camille," she would tell my mom. "You're raising one child to feel entitled and the other to feel worthless." "Please, Mom," my mother would respond with an eye roll. "Ashley is gifted. Emily is, well, Emily is just ordinary. We're being realistic about their abilities." See, Ashley quickly learned how to take advantage of her position. If she broke something, she'd blame me, and my parents believed her without question. If she spilled juice on my homework by accident and I got upset, she'd cry, and somehow I'd end up looking like the bad one. Once, she even told her friends not to play with me because I was the boring sister. When I got accepted into the advanced mathematics program at school, Ashley had a small role in a school play. Guess which event my parents went to? I sat alone in the math classroom during the awards ceremony, watching other parents beam with pride at their children. My certificate was signed by my teacher and the principal, but my parents never even saw it. "Your sister needs us more," Dad would say if I tried to tell them how I felt. "She has real talents to nurture. You're more independent." Independent. It wasn't a compliment. It was their excuse for ignoring me. Even our relatives couldn't help but notice what was happening. At family gatherings, the atmosphere would shift whenever Ashley made a dramatic demand for attention or purposely left me out of activities. The adults exchanged awkward glances, uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. But my parents? They acted like they didn't see it, or maybe, more accurately, they chose not to. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. And my surprise came at Grandma's house when I was 13. I had eaten peanut butter countless times before. It was one of my favorite foods, but that day was different. "Want a sandwich, sweetheart?" Grandma asked, her voice warm as she spread her famous peanut butter and honey mix onto the bread. I nodded eagerly, watching her hands work, but within seconds, something was wrong. My throat began to tighten. Breathing became more and more difficult. I remember dropping the sandwich and clutching at my throat, panic rising. What happened next is still blurry in my memory. Grandma's quick thinking saved my life. She immediately recognized the signs of anaphylaxis and called 911. I remember her holding my hand in the ambulance. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fear lurking beneath it. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Just keep breathing." My parents didn't show up until an hour later at the hospital, and their annoyance was palpable. They were irritated they had to leave work. Mom tapped her foot impatiently as the doctor explained what happened. "She has a severe peanut allergy," the doctor said. "Allergies like this can appear suddenly, even if there were no issues before. She'll need to carry an EpiPen at all times and check food labels carefully. Cross-contamination can be just as dangerous." Dad nodded, but his eyes were glued to his watch. Mom was already typing away on her phone, likely texting Ashley's dance instructor about being late for pickup. The ride home was worse than the hospital. They waited until we were in the car to really show their frustration. "This is just perfect," Mom muttered, as if I were a burden they couldn't afford. "As if we don't have enough to deal with already." Dad sighed. "First the math tutoring, now this. Everything with you has to be so complicated, doesn't it, Emily?" I pressed myself against the car door, shrinking into the seat. My throat still burned from the reaction, but their words cut deeper. The next few years became a careful routine of reading labels, carrying EpiPens everywhere, and praying I wouldn't have another reaction. Grandma made sure I had medical alert bracelets and taught me to speak up about my allergy. She even called the school to explain just how serious it was. Ashley, of course, never missed an opportunity to mock me. She'd wave peanut butter sandwiches in my face, laughing as I flinched. "Oh, sorry," she'd say with a sickly sweet tone, pretending innocence. "I forgot you're allergic to everything now." At family gatherings, she'd shout, "Be careful, everyone! Emily might die if she eats the wrong thing." The awkward laughter that followed made me feel even more like an outsider. And my parents? They never corrected her. If anything, they seemed irritated by the extra attention I needed. I learned to pack my own food, check every label 4 times, and never trust food I hadn't personally checked. It was exhausting, but it became my reality. When I graduated high school, it should have been a moment of triumph. I had earned a full scholarship to Northwestern State University. I had done it all on my own, maintaining straight A's, working part-time jobs, and staying vigilant with my allergy. The acceptance letter felt like proof that all my hard work had paid off. While I stayed up late studying, Ashley's loud music would shake the walls of the house, but now I had something to show for it. The moment I announced my college acceptance is burned into my memory. "I got into Northwestern," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Full academic scholarship." "That's nice, dear," Mom said without looking up from her plate. "The thing is," I continued, gripping my fork tightly, "I'll need help with housing. The scholarship covers tuition, but not accommodation. I've looked into the costs and—" "No." Dad's voice was firm and flat. "You chose to apply to a college in another state. That was your decision. We're saving for Ashley's education. She's planning to go to Riverside in 3 years, and that's not cheap." I stared at my plate, fighting back tears. Across the table, Ashley smirked and twirled her pasta slowly, like she was enjoying the moment. "But it's just the housing cost," I tried again. "The scholarship covers everything else." "Emily," Mom cut in sharply, "we've made our decision. If you want to go to college out of state, you'll have to figure out housing on your own." Right then, the front door opened. Grandma walked in, holding a congratulatory balloon and a small gift bag. Her smile faded as she looked around and saw my red eyes, Ashley's smug face, and my parents' cold expressions. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Ashley giggled, always ready to make things worse. "Oh, Emily got into college, but she'll be living on the street because Mom and Dad won't pay for housing. They're saving for my Riverside education instead." The room fell silent. Grandma's expression darkened. "Is this true?" she asked quietly, but her voice was sharp. When no one answered, she continued, "Camille, John, how dare you? Your daughter earned a full scholarship and you won't even help her with housing." "Mom, please," my mother sighed. "Ashley's education," Dad added quickly. Grandma's voice rose with anger. "What about Emily's education? What about supporting both your children?" Then she turned to Ashley, who still wore that smug look. "And you," Grandma said, her voice colder now. "You're becoming a cruel, spoiled child. I'm ashamed of how you're behaving." Ashley's face crumpled instantly and burst into tears, her favorite trick when things didn't go her way. Mom and Dad jumped up to comfort her, shooting angry glares at Grandma and me. "This is exactly what we mean," Mom snapped at Grandma. "Emily and you're always causing problems, always making things difficult." Something inside me snapped. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, left the dining room, and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. I grabbed my old duffel bag and began tossing clothes into it. A few minutes later, Grandma appeared in the doorway, her presence steady and comforting. "Pack everything you need, sweetheart. You're coming home with me." "But college," I began, unsure how this would work. "It'll be taken care of," she said firmly. "I'll pay for your housing. You focus on your studies and building your future." 30 minutes later, we walked out of that house together. Behind us, my parents' angry voices and Ashley's fake sobs echoed through the walls. As we stepped outside, a strange feeling washed over me. I was leaving behind the people who had always made me feel small, unwanted. I didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. College life was everything I had dreamed of, and more. My small apartment near campus became my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe without walking on eggshells. Grandma visited often. She never missed a birthday, a holiday, or any special moment in my life. But my parents and Ashley, they became like ghosts. No calls on Christmas, no cards on my birthday, not even a text when I graduated. 8 years of complete silence. So when I found myself standing on their doorstep after that phone call about my promotion, it felt surreal. The house looked the same cream-colored walls, the perfect lawn, the brass door knocker I used to stretch to reach as a child. Mom opened the door, her voice too cheerful. "Emily!" Her tone felt rehearsed, and when she pulled me into a hug, it was stiff and unfamiliar. The living room hadn't changed either. Ashley's achievements still dominated the space. Her Riverside degree hung proudly above the fireplace, the centerpiece of it all. Ashley was sitting in Dad's old armchair, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up, only rolling her eyes when Mom started gushing about my promotion. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom kept repeating, the words feeling hollow after 8 years of silence. "Aren't we, John?" Dad nodded from the couch. "Very proud. Moving up in a big company like that. It's impressive." "We need to celebrate properly," Mom continued, her voice shifting into the tone she used when planning Ashley's big events. "A big family gathering right here at the house. Everyone would love to see you. Aunt Marjorie, all your cousins." "And Grandma too?" I asked, my voice pointed, not missing the way she winced. Of course," Mom said quickly, but I saw the slight grimace she tried to hide. "We want to make things right, Emily. It's been too long. How about 3 weeks from now? That'll give everyone time to make arrangements." Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that it was just another empty gesture, but somehow I found myself nodding. "Sure, that sounds nice." The 3 weeks leading up to the party felt strange. Work kept me busy with my new responsibilities, but my phone buzzed constantly. My suddenly attentive family couldn't stop messaging me. Mom sent daily texts about the party preparations. Ashley, who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly sent me a friend request on social media. The message that came with it read, "Time to put the past behind us, sis." Grandma was thrilled. Over one of our weekly dinners, she said, "This is all I've ever wanted, for my family to be whole again." Finally, the day of the party arrived. It was warm and sunny, a perfect day for a gathering. I pulled up to my parents' house and saw cars already lined up along the street. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. Aunt Marjorie's daughter, Megan, was running around with her phone, recording everything like a little documentary filmmaker. The smell of catered food filled the air, and I quickly noticed that everything was nut-free. That was a surprise. Emily, Grandma's warm hug, greeted me first. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Aunt Marjorie hugged me next. "We're so proud of you, kiddo. Department head at your age, that's incredible." Ashley stood by the stairs wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She greeted guests with a perfectly practiced smile, like she was at a beauty pageant. Meanwhile, my parents floated around the house, acting like perfect hosts, as if the last 8 years hadn't happened. When everyone finally sat at the large decorated dining table, Mom stood and clinked her glass for attention. "We're so happy to have everyone here today," she began with a big smile. "As you know, we're celebrating Emily's promotion." She paused as everyone clapped politely. "It's wonderful to see her finally finding her footing in the corporate world." I should have known the word "finally" was a red flag. "And speaking of success," Mom continued, her voice brighter now, "I'd like to take a moment to talk about our Ashley." She launched into a long speech about Ashley's achievements, graduating from Riverside with honors, her artistic talent, and how gifted she was. I sat there, frozen, as Mom finished with, "And now that Emily has this wonderful position and a role in management, we're hoping she can help her incredibly qualified sister join this prestigious company." The table went silent. I felt Grandma's eyes on me and saw Aunt Marjorie shift uncomfortably in her chair. Megan's phone stayed focused on me, recording every painful second. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the pressure, "I'm not in a position to hire anyone. I'm a department head, not a director. I don't make hiring decisions." Mom's smile tightened, but she didn't give up. "Surely with your new influence—" "Excuse me," I said, cutting her off as I stood. "Mom, Dad, can we talk privately?" They followed me into the kitchen, and their fake smiles disappeared the moment we were alone. "I thought this was supposed to be a celebration of my promotion," I said quietly, "not a networking event for Ashley." "Don't be selfish, Emily," Mom snapped. "Ashley needs this opportunity. Family helps family." "Selfish?" I repeated, stunned. "After 8 years of silence, you only reach out because you want something from me, and I'm the selfish one?" Dad's face hardened. "We've given Ashley every advantage, invested everything in her future. The least you can do is help your sister now that you're in a position to do so." We walked back to the dining room, the tension trailing behind us like a storm cloud. I sat back down at the table, trying to ignore Grandma and Aunt Marjorie's worried glances. While we were gone, the catering staff had served the main course, some kind of fancy chicken dish with a creamy sauce. I took a couple of bites, my mind still spinning from the conversation in the kitchen. The sauce had an unusual flavor, nutty. Suddenly, my throat felt tight. Panic hit me like a wave as I realized what was happening. "Peanuts!" I gasped, my hand shaking as I grabbed for my purse, fumbling for my EpiPen. "There's peanuts!" The room started to spin. Chairs scraped across the floor and voices rose in panic. Grandma's voice broke through the noise. "Someone call 911!" After that, everything became a blur, shadows, noise, chaos. The last thing I felt was my throat closing and Grandma's hands holding mine. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors. My throat was raw and my body felt heavy. Grandma was sitting beside my bed, her face tired and full of worry. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, leaning closer when she saw my eyes open. "We almost lost you, sweetheart." The doctor said it was one of the worst reactions they've ever seen. I tried to speak, but the pain in my throat was too much. "Don't try to talk yet," Grandma said, squeezing my hand gently. "You've been out for several hours. The EpiPen and the paramedics barely got to you in time." I managed to whisper, "The food." "They knew." Before Grandma could answer, Aunt Marjorie burst into the room, followed closely by Megan. Megan held her phone tightly, her face unusually serious. "Emily," Aunt Marjorie said, her voice shaking with anger. "There's something you need to see. Megan, show her!" Megan stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held out her phone. "I was recording everything at the party," she said quietly. "I caught this when you were in the kitchen with your parents." On the video, the dining room came into view from a spot near the dessert table. I could see myself leaving the room with my parents. A moment later, Ashley stood up, walked over to my place setting, and reached into her designer purse. She pulled out a small jar, stirred something into my food, then sat back down. The smirk on her face was unmistakable. "That's peanut butter," Aunt Marjorie said, her voice hard. "Your sister deliberately put peanut butter in your food, knowing full well about your allergy." I stared at the screen, unable to look away as the scene replayed. Ashley, my own sister, had tried to. She could have killed me. She knew exactly what she was doing. "She knew exactly what she was doing," Grandma said softly, her voice breaking. The room fell silent as we watched the video again. Ashley's actions were so casual, so deliberate, that tiny smirk as she stirred the peanut butter into my food made it clear this wasn't a mistake. It was planned. I left the hospital against the doctor's advice, fueled by a mix of rage and disbelief. The video Megan had sent me felt heavy in my pocket, as though it carried the weight of everything I had just been through. When I pulled up to my parents' house, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Inside, they were all sitting in the living room. Mom, Dad, and Ashley, acting like nothing had happened, as if I had nearly died at their dinner table just hours earlier. "What are you doing here?" Ashley asked, barely looking up from her phone. "Shouldn't you still be at the hospital, being dramatic?" "I know what you did," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know you put peanut butter in my food." Ashley's head shot up, her face twisting with outrage. "How dare you accuse your sister?" Mom snapped, jumping to her feet. "Haven't you caused enough trouble?" I pulled out my phone, opened the video, and pressed play. The room fell into a heavy silence. The only sound was the video itself. Ashley casually walking to my plate and stirring peanut butter into my food with a smug, self-satisfied smile. The color drained from Ashley's face. Then, unbelievably, she laughed. "Oh, come on, it was just a prank," she said with a shrug. "You're always so serious about everything." A prank? My voice trembled with fury. "I could have died. Do you understand that? The doctor said I barely made it." "Oh, please," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "You're being dramatic. Ashley was just having a bit of fun." "Fun?" I stared at them, disbelief mixing with the raw anger building in my chest. "I had an anaphylactic reaction. My heart nearly stopped." Dad's voice turned cold, calculating, as if this was all just another inconvenience. "Listen carefully. If you even think about taking this to the police, you're no longer our daughter. We'll disinherit you completely." In that moment, the truth hit me like a freight train. These people weren't my family. They never had been. Without another word, I turned and walked out. My hands were steady now, a calm resolve replacing the storm of emotions in my chest. I got into my car and drove home, knowing exactly what I had to do. Sitting at my computer, I uploaded the video to my social media. Below it, I wrote, "Today I learned what family truly means, and these people are not it. My sister deliberately poisoned me with peanuts, knowing I have a life-threatening allergy. My parents called it a prank. This is the last time I will ever call them family." The response was immediate, overwhelming. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years commented in shock, some in anger, others in disbelief. Aunt Marjorie shared the video with her own scathing words. Friends and colleagues reached out, expressing horror and support. My parents and Ashley tried to defend themselves, leaving comments calling me an attention seeker, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But the video didn't lie. The truth was there for everyone to see. The next morning, I walked into the police station and filed a formal report. Later that day, my parents' lawyer delivered a letter to me. It was official. I had been disowned and removed from their will. That evening, Ashley posted a tearful video online, playing the victim. She sobbed about how I was destroying the family with my lies. But I wasn't alone in this. Grandma called me later that night. "I've spoken to my lawyer," she said firmly. "I'm cutting them off completely. You're my only heir now, Emily. You've always been more my daughter than Camille's anyway." I sat on my couch that night, scrolling through the flood of messages pouring in on my phone. Support flooded in from real family members, friends, and colleagues. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "You're still my favorite cousin. Mom says you can come over for dinner anytime." 8 years ago, I had walked away from a toxic family. This time, I was running toward a real one. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes you have to build your own. What do you do when your own family tries to destroy you literally? When the people who are supposed to love you the most treat you like a pawn, a joke, and even a target? Emily worked so hard for everything she achieved: her promotion, her independence, her life. She built it all on her own, even when her family ignored her, belittled her, and favored her sister. And when she finally reached a milestone, when the world saw her for who she was, her parents tried to sweep everything under the rug, using her success as a stepping stone for their own selfish needs. But when Ashley's cruelty went too far, Emily had enough. She didn't back down when her sister tried to poison her. She didn't stay silent when her parents defended it as a prank. Instead, Emily stood tall, exposed the truth, and took the steps that would finally set her free. She didn't need to beg for their love. She didn't need to seek their approval. She had herself, and that was more than enough. So, what would you do? Would you have taken the high road, or would you have exposed the truth just like Emily did? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
I slumped onto the couch, utterly drained from the day's events. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, struggling to process Larry's bombshell revelation. As I stared blankly at the wall, his words echoed in my head like a broken record. "I got Kara pregnant. We need to talk about a divorce, June." Those 9 words shattered the life I had known, sending shockwaves through my very core. "Kara," my supposed best friend since childhood, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way, by having an affair with my husband Larry. And now she carried his child, a living embodiment of their deceit. I couldn't help but let out a bitter chuckle as I remembered the envelope I had been safeguarding for years, the divorce papers I had prepared just in case. Little did I know that the day would come when I'd have to pull them out, not for my own protection, but because of Larry's unfaithfulness. Reaching into the drawer, I retrieved the envelope and slid out the crisp documents. With a deep breath, I handed them to Larry, whose expression was a mixture of shock and guilt. "Here you go, Larry," I said, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. "The divorce papers I've had ready for this very day." Larry's mouth hung open, rendered speechless by my preparedness. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction in catching him off guard. "June, he began, but I held up my hand, silencing him. "Save it, Larry. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. I won't be made a fool of anymore." I stood up, suddenly feeling a surge of strength and determination. This was the moment I had been bracing myself for. The moment when I would reclaim my life and leave behind the betrayal and lies. "Pack your things and get out," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. "I don't want to see your face again." Larry's eyes widened, but he knew better than to argue. He had played his hand, and now it was my turn to take control. As he gathered his belongings, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that the charade was finally over, and I could begin the process of healing and moving on. The door slammed shut behind him, and I was left alone in the silence. But for the first time in a long while, the silence felt liberating, not oppressive. I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, and nothing would stand in my way. In the days following Larry's departure, a heavy silence settled over our suburban Denver home. The once familiar surroundings now felt foreign, reminders of the life I had known slowly crumbling around me. As I navigated this new reality, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Larry's behavior in the weeks leading up to his confession had been odd, to say the least. He was constantly glued to his phone, typing away furiously at all hours of the day and night. Whenever I questioned him about it, he dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand and a mumbled excuse about work. But I knew better. I had seen that kind of behavior before, back when my ex-boyfriend Alex had cheated on me during our college years. The secrecy, the lies, the constant need to be on his phone, it was all too familiar, and it had left me with a deep-seated mistrust that never truly went away. As I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of our once happy life, I couldn't help but flash back to those painful memories. The hurt, the betrayal, the overwhelming sense of not being enough. It all came rushing back, like a tidal wave crashing over me. And yet, even in the midst of my despair, a tiny flicker of anger began to burn within me. How could Larry, the man I had trusted with my heart and my life, do this to me? How could he so callously disregard the vows we had made, the promises we had exchanged? The more I thought about it, the more the anger grew, fueled by the realization that Kara, my supposed best friend, had been in on the whole charade. The two of them sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face. It was a betrayal so deep, so profound, that it shook me to my very core. I found myself replaying every interaction, every conversation, searching for clues that I had missed. Had Kara's overly friendly behavior towards Larry been a sign? Had her constant presence in our lives been a ploy to get closer to him? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. But amidst the hurt and the anger, a newfound resolve began to take shape. I would not be a victim in this twisted web of deceit. I would not allow myself to be cast aside like a piece of trash, discarded and forgotten. No, I would rise above it all, and I would make them pay for what they had done to me. Larry and Kara may have thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming their way. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to fight for my dignity, for my self-respect, and for the life I deserved. Just when I thought the betrayal couldn't sting anymore, life decided to twist the knife even deeper. Kara, the so-called friend who had slept with my husband and gotten herself pregnant, was moving back to town. The universe really did have a sick sense of humor. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence. Surely, Kara wouldn't be brazen enough to rub her conquest in my face by settling down in the same town where she had destroyed my marriage. But as the weeks passed and her presence became more and more apparent, the truth became impossible to ignore. She was everywhere, at the grocery store, the coffee shop, even the park where I used to take leisurely strolls. Each time I saw her, a sickening feeling would rise in the pit of my stomach, a combination of rage and betrayal so potent that it threatened to consume me. And then there was Larry. My soon-to-be ex-husband, who had once sworn to love and cherish me, now seemed to gravitate towards Kara like a moth to a flame. Whenever I saw them together, a twisted sense of camaraderie radiating between them, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "June, you're being ridiculous." Larry would scoff whenever I raised my concerns. "Kara's my friend, too. There's nothing going on." Friend. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth. How could he be so blasé about the woman who had helped him demolish our marriage, our family? How could he not see the blatant disrespect in their constant togetherness? But Larry was blind to it all. Or perhaps he simply didn't care. Either way, his dismissive attitude only fueled the fire burning within me. One night, as I sat alone in the living room, stewing in my anger, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Kara standing on my doorstep, a sickeningly sweet smile plastered across her face. "Hey, bestie," she cooed, as if nothing had changed between us. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." I couldn't believe her audacity. This woman, who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way, had the nerve to show up at my doorstep, acting as if we were still the closest of friends. "Don't you dare call me that," I spat, my voice dripping with venom. "You're no friend of mine, not after what you did." Kara's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "June, come on. We've been friends forever. Surely you're not going to let a little thing like this come between us?" A little thing? I could feel my blood boiling at her callous disregard for the pain she had caused. "Get out," I growled, my fists clenched at my sides. "And don't ever show your face around me again, you lying, deceitful snake." With that, I slammed the door in her face, leaving her stunned on the other side. As I leaned against the closed door, tears of rage streaming down my cheeks, I made a silent vow to myself. I would not let them win. No matter what it took, I would have my revenge. As if the betrayal of my husband and supposed best friend wasn't enough, the universe decided to pile on even more misery. Larry's mother, Evelyn, had been struggling with dementia for years, and it had finally reached a point where she could no longer live on her own. Guess who got saddled with the responsibility of being her full-time caregiver? Yep, that's right. Me. Larry, in all his infinite wisdom, decided that I was the perfect person to take on this burden, despite the fact that our marriage was crumbling around us. And of course, when I protested, he played the guilt card like a master manipulator. "June, you know how much my mom means to me," he pleaded. Those puppy dog eyes that used to melt my heart now only filling me with disgust. "I can't bear the thought of putting her in a home. Please do this for me." Do it for him? After everything he'd done, he had the audacity to ask me for favors? But I knew better than to argue. Larry had a way of twisting words and emotions, using my own fears and insecurities against me. So, like a fool, I agreed. And that's how I found myself spending my days caring for a woman who had never truly accepted me. Evelyn had always been critical of me, making snide remarks about my cooking, my cleaning, my very existence in her son's life. But now, in her more lucid moments, she would reach for my hand, her eyes pleading with me for help, for comfort. It was a twisted game of push and pull, one that left me emotionally and physically drained. One minute she would be cursing my name, calling me a useless burden on her family. The next, she would be begging me to stay, to not leave her alone. Through it all, Larry remained absent, both physically and emotionally. His visits were few and far between, and when he did show up, he was distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. No doubt he was off gallivanting with Kara, living the life he had always dreamed of, while I was stuck in this living nightmare. The weight of it all was suffocating. I found myself longing for the days when my biggest worry was whether or not Larry would remember to pick up milk on his way home from work. Now, my days were filled with cleaning up messes, administering medication, and trying to reason with a woman who was slowly losing her grip on reality. And yet, despite the challenges, despite the constant barrage of insults and ingratitude, there was a part of me that couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of loyalty to Evelyn. After all, she was the mother of the man I had once loved more than anything in this world. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that loyalty began to wear thin. Larry's manipulation, his utter disregard for my well-being, had pushed me to the brink of my own sanity. And slowly, a burning desire for revenge began to take root within me. If he thought he could just discard me like a piece of trash, leaving me to care for his ailing mother while he cavorted with his mistress, he had another thing coming. I may have agreed to play the dutiful wife for now, but mark my words, I would have my vengeance, and it would be sweet. The straw that finally broke the camel's back came in the form of a private investigator's report. After months of suspicion and gut-wrenching uncertainty, I finally had the truth laid bare before me. Larry and Kara's sordid affair, complete with dates, times, and locations of their trysts. As I pored over the damning evidence, a strange sense of calm washed over me. There was no more room for doubt, no more excuses to cling to. The betrayal was real, and it cut deeper than any knife ever could. But amidst the pain, a newfound resolve began to take root. I was done being the victim, the dutiful wife who turned a blind eye to her husband's indiscretions. It was time to take action, to reclaim my life and my dignity. First, though, I had to deal with the ever-present thorn in my side. My mother. Bless her heart, she meant well, but her outdated beliefs and unwavering loyalty to the patriarchy were suffocating me. "June, honey, you have to think about this," she pleaded, her voice laced with concern. "A divorce would ruin your family, ruin Larry's life. You need to stand by your man, for better or worse." Stand by my man? The audacity of such a statement made my blood boil. Had she not seen the evidence, the cold, hard proof of his betrayal? "Mom, with all due respect, Larry made his choices," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. "He chose to cheat, to lie, to disrespect our marriage vows. I won't be made a fool of any longer." My mother's eyes widened, taken aback by my newfound assertiveness. But before she could protest further, I held up a hand to silence her. "This is my decision, and it's final. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." With that, I turned on my heel and left her sputtering in the living room. No more excuses, no more justifications. It was time to take control of my life. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly, laying the groundwork for my revenge. I consulted with lawyers, gathered evidence, and made contingency plans. All the while, I played the part of the dutiful wife, lulling Larry into a false sense of security. And then, when the time was right, I struck. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when I called Larry into the living room, a stack of papers clutched in my hand. He ambled in, unsuspecting, that dopey grin on his face that used to make my heart flutter. "What's up, honey?" he asked, plopping down on the couch. Without a word, I tossed the stack of papers onto his lap. Divorce papers, already filled out and signed by me. Larry's eyes widened in shock as he flipped through the pages, realization dawning on his face. "June, what is this? You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am," I replied, my voice cold and steady. "You brought this on yourself, Larry. Now it's time to face the consequences." As he scrambled to his feet, pleading and begging for another chance, I simply turned my back and walked away. No more words needed to be said. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. Revenge, it seemed, would be mine after all. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. As I stood in the living room, facing Larry and Kara, it was like a scene straight out of a twisted drama. The two of them, huddled together on the couch, their faces etched with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "June, please," Larry began, his voice trembling. "Let's talk about this. We can work things out." "Work things out?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips as I shook my head in disbelief. "Work things out? You really have some nerve, Larry." I turned my gaze towards Kara, who couldn't even meet my eyes. "And you, my supposed best friend, how could you do this to me?" Kara mumbled something under her breath, but I held up a hand to silence her. "Save it. I don't want to hear any more of your lies." Larry rose to his feet, desperation written all over his face. "June, think about this. A divorce would ruin me. My career, my reputation, everything would be destroyed." For a moment, a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Was I really ready to upend our lives like this? But then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the countless nights spent crying myself to sleep, and that doubt evaporated like smoke. "That's not my problem anymore, Larry," I said, my voice steely with resolve. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." Kara finally found her voice, her eyes brimming with tears. "June, please. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened." It just happened?" I repeated incredulously. "You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and you have the audacity to make excuses?" I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, a white-hot rage that had been simmering for months. "You know what, Kara? You're not my friend anymore. Why, in fact, you're nothing to me. Both of you can go to hell." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, suffocating us all with their finality. Larry opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off before he could start. "Don't even try it, Larry. This is over. Done. Finished. I want you out of this house by the end of the day." Kara let out a sob, burying her face in her hands. Larry, on the other hand, simply stared at me in stunned silence, as if he couldn't quite believe what was happening. "June, please," he tried again, desperation seeping into his voice. "I'll do anything. Just don't do this." But I was done listening, done making excuses for his behavior. With a shake of my head, I turned and walked away, leaving them to their misery. As I climbed the stairs, each step felt lighter, as if a massive weight was being lifted from my shoulders. The lies, the deceit, the constant sense of betrayal, it was all finally behind me. In that moment, I knew that no matter what came next, I would be okay. I had survived the unthinkable, and I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Larry and Kara may have thought they had won, but in the end, it was me who had reclaimed my power, my dignity, and my life. And as I closed the bedroom door behind me, I couldn't help but smile. Revenge, it seemed, was truly a dish best served cold. The next few hours were a blur of activity, punctuated by the sounds of shouting and slamming doors. True to my word, I was kicking Larry out of our home, and he was not going quietly. "June, please, let's talk about this," he pleaded, his voice a mixture of desperation and anger. "You can't just throw me out on the street." I steeled myself against his protests, focusing instead on the task at hand. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I began gathering his belongings, clothes, books, personal effects, and tossing them haphazardly into boxes and bags. "June, stop this madness," he shouted, grabbing my arm in a futile attempt to halt my progress. "Think about what you're doing." I twisted out of his grasp, my eyes blazing with a fury I had never felt before. "Don't you dare touch me, Larry. You lost that right a long time ago." Kara, bless her soul, had wisely chosen to remove herself from the situation, retreating to who knows where, but even her absence couldn't dampen the raging fire within me. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The chance to excise the cancer that had been slowly poisoning my life. With each item I packed, each memory I boxed away, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I would be damned if I let Larry's betrayal taint it any longer. "June, please, I'm begging you," he tried again, his voice cracking with emotion. "I can make things right, I swear. Just give me another chance." Another chance? The absurdity of his request nearly made me laugh out loud. How many chances had I given him already, only to have them thrown back in my face? "You had your chance, Larry," I said, my voice cold and unwavering, "and you blew it. Now it's time to face the consequences." As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me. Angela, my best friend and confidant, had arrived, not a moment too soon. I opened the door to find her standing there, a look of steely determination on her face. Without a word, she brushed past me and made her way towards Larry, who was still pleading his case. "You heard the lady," Angela said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "It's time for you to go." Larry's eyes widened as he took in her imposing presence. For a moment I thought he might try to argue, but one look from Angela seemed to drain him of his fight. "Fine," he spat, his voice dripping with bitterness. "But this isn't over, June. Not by a long shot." With that, he gathered up the boxes and bags, shooting me one last venomous glare before storming out the door and slamming it behind him. As the echoes of his departure faded, I felt myself sag against the wall, the weight of the past few hours finally catching up to me. Angela was at my side in an instant, her arms wrapped around me in a comforting embrace. "It's okay," she murmured, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "You did the right thing. He's gone, and you're free." And in that moment, as I clung to my friend, I knew she was right. The battle had been won, and the war was finally over. Larry was gone, banished from my life, and I could finally begin to heal. Revenge, it seemed, was a dish best served piping hot. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional upheaval, but through it all, I remained steadfast in my resolve. Larry thought he could walk away scot-free, but he had another thing coming. With the help of a tenacious lawyer, I went after him for everything he had: alimony, assets, you name it. And in the end, my perseverance paid off. The judge saw right through Larry's lies and awarded me a hefty settlement, one that would ensure I could start my new life on solid financial footing. But the true victory, the sweetest revenge, came in the form of Kara's downfall. Karma, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. It all started when Kara's new boyfriend, some poor schmuck she had sunk her claws into, caught wind of her sordid affair with Larry. Needless to say, he was less than thrilled about being played for a fool. "You lying, deceitful snake," he shouted, his voice carrying across the restaurant where they had been having a romantic dinner. "How could you do this to me?" Kara, for all her manipulative ways, was clearly caught off guard. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, unable to conjure up one of her trademark excuses. I can explain," she stammered, her eyes darting around the room in panic. But her boyfriend wasn't having any of it. With a shake of his head, he pushed away from the table and stormed out, leaving Kara to face the scrutiny of the other diners alone. As word of her betrayal spread through our social circles, Kara found herself increasingly ostracized. Friends who had once fawned over her suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. Even her own family seemed to turn their backs, ashamed of her actions. And through it all, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Payback, it seemed, was a dish best served ice cold. As for me, I was slowly but surely piecing my life back together. With Angela's unwavering support, I had moved into her spare bedroom, using it as a temporary home base while I figured out my next steps. It was during those long nights, huddled together on the couch with a bottle of wine and endless episodes of trashy reality TV, that the idea began to take shape. A business, one that would help other women like me, women who had been betrayed, belittled, and beaten down by the men in their lives. With Angela's encouragement, I took the leap, pouring my savings and settlement money into launching a boutique consulting firm. Our mission? To empower women, to help them find their strength and reclaim their lives after heartbreak and betrayal. It was a risky move, but one that paid off in spades. Word of our services spread like wildfire, and before long we had a thriving client base of women from all walks of life, each one seeking the same thing: revenge. And as I sat in my sunny office, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of a successful business, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I had taken the ultimate revenge on Larry and Kara. I had built a life for myself, one that was infinitely better than anything they could have ever offered me. As for them, well, let's just say that karma has a way of evening the score. And in the end, it was me who emerged victorious, with a newfound strength and resilience that no one could ever take away. Revenge, it seemed, was a dish best served with a side of empowerment and a heaping helping of success. Matthew scrutinized the divorce papers and smirked. "Really, Lisa? You think you'll make it on your own? Without me, you're nothing." His words stung, but I wouldn't let him see it. I kept my expression firm, biting back the retort on the tip of my tongue. Instead, I took a deep breath and assessed the living room. It was a typical suburban home in a mid-sized American city. Everything was incredibly well organized, a stark contrast to Matthew's perpetual messiness. I broke the silence. "We'll see about that." Matthew laughed, tossing the papers onto the coffee table. "You've never been on your own? You think you can just leave?" "I'm not thinking, Matthew. I'm doing it." He shrugged, picking up his phone and scrolling through it lazily. "Go ahead. You'll come crawling back when you realize you can't handle it." Ignoring him, I moved to the kitchen, the one safe space left in the house. Memories of happier times cluttered my mind every time I stepped through the door. The kitchen was like a parallel universe compared to Matthew's chaos, the harmony amid discord. As I filled the kettle, I heard the low murmur of Matthew's voice from the living room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tiptoed to the doorway. "Yeah, she's finally taking the bait," Matthew said, his voice muffled as he spoke into the phone. "Really thought she was something, but she's about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Can't even keep up with the simplest tasks." My stomach churned. The person I had spent years supporting, laughing with, and loving was selling me short to his friends like I was some joke. Determined to keep my emotions in check, I focused on pouring the hot water over my tea bag, watching the steam curl upward. Matthew's voice grew louder. "She thinks she's got this big plan to leave me and start fresh. Honestly, it's pathetic. Once a quitter, always a quitter." The words cut through me, each one a tiny jab that threatened to bring tears to my eyes. I held my breath, willing myself not to cry. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I returned to the living room, teacup in hand. "You done making your little jokes?" Matthew hung up the phone, not even bothering to disguise his irritation. "Were you eavesdropping?" "I didn't need to eavesdrop to know what you think of me." He shrugged. "You're oversensitive. It's just harmless banter." "Harmless?" I echoed. "You're belittling me to your friends. They know the truth about you. Maybe you should start accepting it, too." He grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." The door closed with a finality that echoed in our strangely silent house. I watched him leave, each step he took away opening a small window of relief in my chest. When the headlights of his car vanished down the street, I exhaled deeply, sipping my now lukewarm tea. This was my test, my chance to prove him wrong. For too long, I'd allowed Matthew to dictate the terms of my life, convincing myself I was nothing without him. But now, it's time to be something more. I walked to the living room, grabbed the divorce papers, and sat at the desk with a pen in hand. I felt a surge of determination, this time different. This time, it was real. I signed my name with purpose, each stroke of the pen a declaration of independence. "I'm not nothing, Matthew. I'm just beginning." I stared at the signature on the divorce papers, feeling a strange mix of resolve and uncertainty, but there was no turning back now. As I moved the papers aside, memories of our early days flooded back, uninvited. Matthew and I met at work. He was charismatic, effortlessly charming everyone around him. I was drawn to that magnetism, almost helplessly. Our romance was whirlwind, filled with grand gestures and sweet promises. Early on, we were inseparable. I left my job to support his career, convinced by his words and my own naive belief that it was for the best. Helping Matthew at work started small. A few emails here, a report there. Soon I was practically running his department from behind the scenes. He'd prop up the image while I managed the reality. Our professional dynamics evolved, except it wasn't evolution, it was exploitation. I recalled a recent conversation with one of his old coworkers, Cam. We ran into each other at a grocery store. "Hey, Lisa. Long time no see," Cam greeted, throwing some vegetables into his cart. "What have you been up to these days?" I forced a smile. "Oh, still helping Matthew with his work. You know how it is." Cam's eye roll was slight but noticeable. "Yeah, everyone knows how it is with Matthew. The guy's a legend in his own mind." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He's always talking about how he runs the show. Calls himself a genius, but we all know who's really doing the work." I forced a laugh. "Oh, you know Matthew. Always boasting." Cam leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. "Actually, some folks say he takes credit for your work. Heard it more than once around the office." The conversation stayed with me, gnawing at my sense of loyalty and justice. Over time, Matthew's reliance on me didn't breed gratitude but contempt. He treated me like his personal assistant, his condescending attitude growing more frequent. Each task I handled, every problem I solved, felt like another nail in the coffin of our supposed partnership. Days after that grocery store encounter, I was at Matthew's office, dropping off some paperwork he had conveniently forgotten. As I waited, I overheard snippets of a hushed conversation between two of his colleagues in the break room. "You hear about Matthew's latest screw-up?" one asked, chuckling. "Which one? Seems like there's a new one every week." "Guy's useless without Lisa," the other replied. My blood boiled, but I walked away quickly, pretending I hadn't heard. Pretending had seemed easier back then. Sitting now in my quiet kitchen, I realized just how deeply the facade went, how much I had buried to keep the peace. I could no longer ignore the extent of Matthew's disrespect. He had built his success on my efforts and derided me behind my back. I picked up my phone and dialed Rebecca, my lawyer and longtime friend. Her voice was a lifeline. "Rebecca, it's time," I said, my voice steady. "All right, Lisa. I'll start the paperwork. We'll get this done." Clicking off, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Empowerment. The next step in my journey was clear. This was just the beginning, and Matthew had no idea what was coming. I folded the last of the laundry and heard the front door slam. Matthew was home early, which was never a good sign. He stormed into the living room, his face flushed with anger. "Lisa," he barked, "get in here." I walked in, my hands still slightly damp from the laundry. "What's wrong?" He held up his phone, shoving it in my face. "Why did someone tell me you were snooping around at my office?" I took a step back. "I wasn't snooping, Matthew. I went to drop off those papers like you asked." "Yeah? And what else did you do? Gossip with my coworkers? Try to undermine me?" I leveled my gaze at him. "Undermine you? You don't need my help for that." He glared at me, his eyes darkening. "Watch it, Lisa. I can ruin you." "I've already signed the divorce papers, Matthew. You think you can still scare me?" He threw his hands up in the air. "Papers mean nothing. You'll crawl back when you realize you can't handle life without me." The doorbell rang, breaking the tense silence. I opened the door to find Cam standing there, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, Lisa, can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure, Cam, what's up?" Cam glanced past me at Matthew, who was still fuming. "I think you should know something. Matthew's been talking a lot of trash about you at work." Matthew scoffed from the couch. "Oh, here we go." Ignoring Matthew, Cam continued. "He says you're incompetent, that you can't handle anything on your own." My heart pounded. I know he's been bad-mouthing me. I've heard it before. Cam shifted uneasily. "It's worse than that. Matthew's been flirting with Karen Blake. More than flirting, actually." I looked at Matthew, who was trying and failing to act nonchalant. "Karen? Really, Matthew?" "What?" he said, feigning innocence. "She's just a friend." "Yeah, a friend. A friend who sends you heart emojis and late-night texts." I shot back, my voice rising. Matthew's eyes narrowed. "Don't pretend to be the victim here. You're overreacting. Karen's harmless." Cam stepped in. "Actually, I saw them together. They looked pretty cozy during that business dinner last week." I turned to Matthew. "Care to explain?" He rolled his eyes. "It was a business dinner. Get over it." I couldn't believe him. My mind raced, piecing together the lies, the disrespect, the sheer arrogance. I needed proof, and I needed it fast. "I'm done, Matthew. This marriage is over, and you know it." He smirked. "Good luck. You'll never manage without me." I stared at him, the man I'd devoted years of my life to, and felt only cold resolve. We'll see about that. As he stormed out, I thanked Cam for confirming what I already suspected. Knowing Matthew's true colors gave me the fuel I needed. I started gathering evidence, documenting everything. His texts, his meetings, even looking through his finances. I had pictures of him and Karen at various outings. His secrets were unraveling, and with each new piece of information, I realized how little I actually knew Matthew. But it wasn't just about exposing his infidelity. It was about taking back control. I called Rebecca again, sharing my discoveries. She listened, understanding the full weight of what I had uncovered. "We'll use this, Lisa," she assured me. "This will solidify your case." I hung up, feeling a strange sense of calm. This was no longer about just leaving. This was about getting my life back from a man who had taken too much from me. As I put away my phone, I promised myself that Matthew's reign of manipulation would end, one way or another. I sat at my desk, the cold blue glow of my laptop screen lighting up the documents and pictures scattered around me. Each piece of evidence felt like a step closer to reclaiming my life. Matthew's texts, financial records, and photos with Karen all painted a clear picture. He had underestimated me, and that was about to be his downfall. Rebecca met me the next day at a quiet cafe. I spread the documents out on the table between us. "This is solid," she said, flipping through the evidence. "Matthew really let his guard down. He thinks I'm still that naive woman he married," I replied, my voice steady. Rebecca smiled. "But you're so much more than that now. This will help us build a strong case for your divorce." We spent the next hour strategizing, discussing how to use this evidence to counteract any claims Matthew might make. The plan was coming together. and I felt more confident by the minute. Back home, I knew the next step was to hit Matthew where it hurt. His job. I accessed the company systems, leveraging my knowledge from years of running things behind the scenes. I started small, ensuring vital information was missing or incorrect. It wouldn't be traceable back to me, but the effects would be noticeable. Days later, Matthew came home, visibly agitated. "Work was a nightmare today," he grumbled, throwing his jacket onto the couch. "Really?" I asked innocently. "What happened?" "Some crucial data went missing. Then we discovered a bunch of errors in the reports. It's chaos." I nodded, suppressing a smile. "Sounds tough." "You have no idea," he said, rubbing his temples, "and I'm the one who's going to take the fall if this isn't fixed." That night, I continued to sabotage his work, planting seeds for more chaos. The next week, he came home fuming. "Lisa, everything's falling apart." He paced the living room, panic clearly etched on his face. "Every time we fix one problem, 2 more pop up." "Strange," I replied, barely containing my satisfaction. "Maybe you should look at your team's performance." Deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before his incompetence would be exposed. I just had to keep pushing. One evening, as Matthew was out, I sat down with Rebecca to finalize my plans. The divorce papers were one thing, but we needed the perfect timing to ensure everything would collapse simultaneously. "Focus on the next big project he's handling," Rebecca advised. "If we can create enough disruption there, the fallout will be catastrophic for him." I nodded, understanding the significance. This was more than revenge. This was my liberation. I'll make it happen. The big project was a merger deal Matthew had been bragging about for weeks. I accessed critical documents and altered key details, ensuring he wouldn't notice until it was too late. As the deadline approached, Matthew's panic grew. The night before the final presentation, he was frantically reviewing his notes. "Why isn't any of this making sense?" he muttered, eyes darting over the papers. I watched him with a calm, detached demeanor. "You're probably just tired," I offered. "Maybe sleep on it." "Sleep with this mess?" He stomped off to his study, leaving me alone in the living room. Early the next morning, Rebecca texted me. "Ready?" I replied, "More than ready." I took the divorce papers from the drawer, just every line of ink a testament to my resolve. Today, Matthew's world would crumble, and I would be there to watch it fall, stronger and freer than I'd been in years. This was my turn to rise. The morning light filtered through the blinds as I sipped my coffee, awaiting the inevitable fallout at Matthew's office. The merger deal was set to be finalized today, and I knew the errors I'd planted would come to light like a ticking time bomb. Around midday, my phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. "It's happening. I just got word from a friend at the company. The project's blown up in his face." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Perfect, I'll be ready. An hour later, Matthew burst through the door, his face a mask of fury and desperation. "Everything's gone to hell," he spat, flinging his briefcase against the wall. "The merger is dead. Dead! They're blaming me for the failures." I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean?" He shouted, pacing like a caged animal. "We lost crucial files. The figures were all wrong. They think I sabotaged it." "Maybe you should have double-checked everything," I said calmly. "It's your responsibility, isn't it?" He whipped around, eyes blazing. "You don't understand, Lisa. This could ruin me." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Maybe you should have thought about that before treating everyone, including me, like they're beneath you." His anger shifted to a sneer. "You think you're so special? Signing those divorce papers doesn't make you independent. You'll come crawling back, mark my words." I stood up, walking over to the desk and picking up the divorce papers. "Actually, Matthew, I brought them for you to sign. Given your current predicament, I'd say the timing is perfect." He laughed bitterly. "You think these papers mean anything? You're nothing without me." "We'll see about that." I placed the papers firmly in front of him. "Sign them, Matthew." He grabbed a pen, his hand shaking with rage, and scrawled his name angrily across the bottom. I gathered the papers, feeling an overwhelming sense of triumph. At that moment, his phone buzzed incessantly with calls. He ignored it, glaring at me instead. "You think this is over? You'll regret this. Mark my words." I stayed silent, my resolve unshaken. He stormed out, leaving the house in turmoil, his world crumbling around him. That night, I sat quietly in the living room, absorbing the moment. The weight on my shoulders felt lighter. The next steps were clear. I needed to finalize the divorce and reclaim my life in full. A few days later, the news broke at Matthew's company. He was publicly reprimanded, demoted from his high-ranking position. The scandal of the botched merger rippled through the company, leaving his reputation in tatters. Matthew's calls grew desperate, but I ignored them. Finally, he appeared at the door again, a shadow of his former self. "Lisa, this is all a misunderstanding. We can fix this. You and me, like old times." I looked at him, seeing the man who once held me captive under his thumb, now reduced to pleading. "There are no old times, Matthew, only what's next. And for me, that doesn't include you." As he stood there, dumbfounded, I closed the door on him, and that part of my life, for good. This was the end of Matthew's reign over me, but just the beginning of my true independence. I had torn down the walls of my old life and was finally stepping into my own, no longer confined by his manipulations. The future was mine, built on my terms. The news of Matthew's public demotion spread like wildfire. His once admired reputation crumbled, and the fallout from the botched merger left him ostracized at work. I could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from his coworkers. A week later, I walked into the office of David Walsh, my former boss. He greeted me with a warm smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Lisa, it's been too long. Sit down. Let's catch up." I took a seat, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift slightly. "Thanks for seeing me, David." "Are you kidding? We've missed you around here," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I heard about what happened with Matthew. How are you holding up?" "I'm doing better, actually. It's been tough, but it's also been a wake-up call. I'm ready to get back into the workforce." David nodded, his expression serious. "Matthew never appreciated what he had in you, Lisa. You were always the backbone, and it's about time you got the recognition you deserve." "Thank you, David. I have a lot to offer, and I'm ready to prove it." "Good," he said, leaning forward. "How would you feel about coming back on board? We need someone with your skills and experience." My heart leapt. "I'd love that. I'm more than ready." As we discussed the details, a sense of liberation washed over me. This was the turning point I had been waiting for, a chance to rebuild not only my career, but my entire life. Back home, I started job hunting in earnest, sending out resumes and setting up interviews. I reconnected with former colleagues, each conversation a reminder of my capabilities and talents. The process was invigorating, a stark contrast to the stifling environment I had endured with Matthew. Meanwhile, Matthew's desperation grew. He called repeatedly, each message more frantic than the last. "Lisa, please call me back. We need to talk. I can fix this." I ignored him, focusing on my own path. One evening, as I prepared for an interview, Matthew showed up at the door again, looking haggard. "Lisa, you have to help me," he pleaded. I crossed my arms, standing firm. "Help you? After everything you've done?" "You don't understand. They're transferring me to a dead-end position. My career is over." I felt a flicker of pity, but quickly smothered it. "That's your problem, not mine. You made your bed, Matthews. Now you have to lie in it." His face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this, Lisa. You think you're better off without me, but you'll see. You'll come crawling back." I shook my head, closing the door on his threats. Goodbye, Matthew. The next weeks flew by. I landed a prestigious role at a new company, my skills and resilience impressing my new boss. The sense of accomplishment was exhilarating, each day a reminder that I was capable and deserving of success. Matthew, on the other hand, continued to spiral downward. The transfer to a trivial position sealed his professional downfall, and his reputation was beyond repair. He tried to take legal action, desperate to hold on to the last shreds of his former life, but Rebecca and I were prepared. We had the evidence, the paperwork, and the resolve to see it through. In our final confrontation, he attempted to get Lisa back through legal means, but I revealed all the documentation. "You're finished, Matthew," I said with a calm finality. "I've moved on. It's time you do the same." With each passing day, I felt stronger, vindicated. I had not only reclaimed my career, but my sense of self. Matthew's downfall was complete, a testament to his own deceit and arrogance. As I flourished in my new role, his life continued to unravel. This was my victory, my liberation, and as I moved forward, I knew the future was mine to shape, free from the shadows of the past. I was on my way home from work, feeling blissfully tired after a fulfilling day at my new job, when I received a call from Rebecca. "Lisa, we've got a problem. Matthew is trying to contest the divorce. He's claiming you manipulated him into signing the papers." I pulled into my driveway, gripping the steering wheel. "He's desperate, Rekka. Are we prepared to handle this?" "Absolutely, but it means another court date. He's not letting go easily." "All right," I said, my voice steady. "I'll be ready." The court date arrived quicker than I expected. Matthew looked haggard, but his eyes were filled with defiance as he sat across from me. His lawyer stood up first, spouting allegations that made my blood boil. Miss Hartman exploited Mr. Hartman's emotional state, coercing him into signing the divorce papers, the lawyer declared, pointing at me with undue dramatics. I whispered to Rebecca, "This is nonsense." Rebecca nodded. "Let me handle this." She stood, her voice level but firm. "Your Honor, we have ample evidence that Mr. Hartman willingly signed the divorce papers with full understanding. Moreover, we have documentation proving his ulterior motives and abusive behavior throughout the marriage." Matthew scoffed. "She's lying. I was under immense pressure. None of this is fair." The judge eyed Matthew skeptically. "Mr. Hartman, your claims lack substantial evidence. Based on the provided documents and testimonies, it's clear that Miss Hartman has grounds for divorce." I watched as the realization hit him. His face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this, Lisa. Mark my words. This isn't over." I stood my ground, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "Actually, it is over, Matthew." The judge finalized the divorce, and I walked out of the courtroom feeling lighter. The weight of our toxic marriage finally lifted from my shoulders. A few weeks after the court ruling, I learned that Matthew had been transferred to a menial position in a remote office. His life had unraveled completely, a stark contrast to his former arrogance. One evening, as I reviewed files for a big project, my phone rang. It was David. "Lisa, I have some great news. We're promoting you to lead the new strategic planning division. Your work has been outstanding." I could hardly contain my excitement. "Thank you, David. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he replied warmly. "Congratulations, Lisa. You've earned this." My career was thriving, and my life was finally coming together. That night, I celebrated with close friends, toasting to new beginnings and the strength to overcome past struggles. Meanwhile, Matthew's life continued its downward spiral. His arrogance had led to his downfall, and there was no one left to clean up his messes. He was left to face the consequences of his actions alone. As I looked around at my friends, I felt a deep sense of gratitude and triumph. I had reclaimed my life, my career, and my dignity. The shadow of Matthew's toxic presence had faded, replaced by the bright possibilities of the future. The final showdown with Matthew was over, and I had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. The path ahead was mine to walk, free from manipulation and deceit. For the first time in years, I felt a profound sense of peace. The drama, the revenge, and the struggle had all led me to this moment, and I was ready to embrace every opportunity that came my way, confident in who I had become. I spent the next weeks settling into my new role, thus flourishing in a supportive environment that valued my contributions. Life was finally coming together. One Saturday morning, I was tidying up when the doorbell rang. Answering it, I was surprised to find Matthew's mother, Eleanor, and his sister, Nancy, standing there, looking somber. "Lisa, we need to talk," Eleanor said with an edge in her voice. I stepped aside, motioning them into the living room. "Come in." Once seated, Eleanor wasted no time. "How could you do this to Matthew? He's family. You're tearing us apart." Nancy chimed in, her tone accusatory. "You abandoned him when he needed you the most. What kind of person does that?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You both have no idea what I went through. Matthew's lies, his manipulations, and his affairs were too much to bear." Eleanor's face hardened. "He's your husband. You made vows to stand by him." I held her gaze. "And he broke those vows repeatedly. Why should I stay with a man who treats me like I'm nothing?" Nancy crossed her arms. "We've known Matthew longer than you, Lisa. He needs love and support, not betrayal." "Support?" I laughed bitterly, like how he supported me by belittling my efforts and taking credit for my work. Eleanor looked taken aback, but she wasn't giving up. "People make mistakes. Families forgive." "There's a limit, Eleanor," I said firmly. "Matthew's arrogance and deceit are his downfall, not my doing." Nancy finally dropped her confrontational stance, seeming to remember who I was to Matthew once, before everything fell apart. What happened, Lisa? He wasn't always this way. I sighed, feeling a mix of old pains and new strength. No, he wasn't. But power corrupted him, and he lost sight of what we had. I couldn't save him from himself. Eleanor's face softened slightly. We didn't know it was that bad. But you must understand, he's still our family. I understand, I replied, caught, my voice softer but resolved. But I had to choose my well-being over his dysfunction. I hope you can, too. The room fell silent. Eleanor and Nancy exchanged looks, but said nothing more. They got up to leave, Eleanor pausing at the door. We'll always care about you, Lisa, but this is hard for us to accept. I know, I said, holding back a wave of complex emotions. And I appreciate that, but I had to do what was right for me. As they left, I felt a sense of closure. The confrontation had opened old wounds, but it confirmed my choices. I returned to my desk, looking at the projects awaiting me. My life was moving forward, and I could feel its pace quickening in ways that excited rather than overwhelmed me. Reflecting on my journey, I recognized my transformation. From a supportive wife lost in her husband's shadow, I had become an independent individual charting her own path. I had faced manipulation, deceit, and familial conflict, and had come out stronger on the other side. With a deep breath, I tidied up the remaining reminders of my past, consigning them to a box that would be stored away. My future was now full of potential, unclouded by the failures and betrayals that once held me back. I smiled, feeling a wave of contentment wash over me. The final ties to my past were cut. The world awaited, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. This was my new beginning, built on my terms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a genuine sense of peace and purpose. I stared at the plate of food in front of me, Derek's words still ringing in my ears. Wow! Lo, I didn't think it was possible, but your cooking gets worse every day. I sighed, setting down my fork. Is it really that bad? I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. Derek scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Worse. I wouldn't even feed it to a stray dog. You can't cook, you can't clean, and you can't even give me a kid. What good are you? His words cut deep, piercing the fragile remnants of my self-esteem. I opened my mouth to respond, but his mother, Gwen, beat me to it. Now, Derek, she chided, though her tone held no real reproach. Don't be too hard on the girl. It's not her fault she's a failure in every sense of the word. I flinched, her insult stinging like a slap to the face. It wasn't the first time they'd belittled me, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Living with Derek and his mother was a constant battle, a war of attrition against my very soul. As I cleared the table and set about washing the dishes, my mind drifted back to the countless times I'd tried to conceive, only to be met with disappointment and Derek's scathing remarks about my inadequacy. The words barren and useless echoed in my mind, taunting me with my perceived failures. Little did they know, I had recently discovered something that would change everything. While scrolling through social media forums, I came across a series of posts made by Derek himself, mocking my lack of culinary skills and expressing his desire for a divorce. He painted himself as the victim, a man trapped in a loveless marriage, seeking sympathy from strangers online. As I finished the dishes and retreated to the solace of my bedroom, I couldn't help but feel a sense of determination rising within me. For too long, I had allowed Derek and Gwen to diminish me, to strip away my sense of self-worth. But no more. It was time to take control of my life, to break free from the shackles of their cruelty. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my happiness, my dignity, and my future. This was just the beginning, the spark that would ignite a fire of change, burning away the chains that had bound me for far too long. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of Derek's voice, already berating me for some perceived failure. Leela, where's my clean shirt? I have an important meeting today, and you couldn't even do one simple task. I hurried into the living room, bleary-eyed and still in my pajamas. I'm sorry, Derek, I'll get your shirt ready right away. Gwen clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Honestly, Lila, it's like you don't even try. No wonder my son is so disappointed in you. I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that threatened to spill forth. Instead, I scurried to the laundry room, grabbing Derek's freshly pressed shirt from the pile of clean clothes. As I handed it to him, he snatched it from my grasp, his expression one of disdain. "Took you long enough. At this rate, I'll be late for work." "I'm sorry," I mumbled, but he had already turned away, his attention focused on his phone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of monotony. I went to work, enduring the usual drudgery of my insurance job, only to return home and face the endless cycle of chores and criticism. Derek and Gwen seemed to take particular delight in pointing out my every flaw, no matter how insignificant. "Did you even bother cleaning the bathroom today?" Gwen sneered as I entered the kitchen to start dinner. "Of course I did," I responded, my voice weary. "Well, it doesn't look like it," Derek chimed in, his tone dripping with contempt. "But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You're useless at everything else. Why would cleaning be any different?" I fought back tears as I turned my attention to the stove, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Little did they know, their constant jabs were only fueling the fire burning within me, a fire that would soon consume their complacent cruelty. As the evening wore on, another source of tension emerged, Derek's gambling addiction. He had been losing money at an alarming rate, and the stress of his mounting debts was palpable. "You need to get your shit together," Gwen hissed, her voice low but venomous. "If you keep pissing away our money like this, we'll end up on the street." Derek slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with anger. "Back off, Mother. It's none of your business how I spend my money." "It is when you're gambling away our future." Gwen shot back, her eyes blazing with fury. I watched the exchange unfold, a twisted sense of satisfaction creeping over me. Their dysfunction, their toxicity, it was all coming to a head, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the whole house of cards came crashing down. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of Derek's emotional and financial abuse pressing down on me, I made a decision. No more would I be the victim, the punching bag for their cruelty. It was time to take control, to exact my revenge and reclaim my life. The thought filled me with a sense of determination, a steely resolve that would carry me through the battles to come. Derek and Gwen had no idea what was in store for them, but they would soon learn the true cost of their actions. The breaking point came a few nights later, when Derek stormed into the house, reeking of alcohol and anger. "Where the hell is my dinner, woman?" he slurred, his words slurring together. I stepped out of the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel. "It's almost ready, Derek. Just give me a few more minutes," he sneered, his eyes narrowing. "That's what you always say. Useless, just like everything else you do." Before I could respond, Gwen chimed in from the living room. "Don't talk to her like that, Derek. She's trying her best." "Her best?" he spat, rounding on his mother. "Her best is pathetic. I should have left this worthless sack years ago." Something inside me snapped at his words. Years of pent-up frustration, anger, and resentment came bubbling to the surface, and I couldn't hold it back any longer. "That's enough," I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. "I've had it with your constant abuse, your endless belittling. I'm not going to take it anymore." Derek's eyes widened, caught off guard by my sudden outburst. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me," I continued, emboldened by my newfound courage. "I'm done being your punching bag, your emotional doormat. I deserve better than this, better than you." Gwen opened her mouth to interject, but I cut her off with a sharp glare. "And you're just as bad as he is, enabling his behavior, joining in on the insults. Well, no more." I turned back to Derek, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I'm leaving you, Derek. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure you pay for every ounce of suffering you've put me through." For a moment, Derek was speechless, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. Then his expression twisted into one of rage. "You ungrateful bitch," he snarled, taking a step towards me. I stood my ground, unflinching. "Don't even think about it," I warned, my voice low and steady. "I'm not the same doormat you've been kicking around all these years." With that, I brushed past him, ignoring his sputtered threats and insults. I quickly packed a bag with some essentials and headed for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath of the cool night air, a sense of freedom washing over me. I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years I felt alive, invigorated by the prospect of reclaiming my life. I made my way to my brother Jason's house, knocking on the door with a newfound sense of purpose. When he opened it, his eyes widened at the sight of my disheveled appearance and the bag slung over my shoulder. "Lila, what's going on?" I steeled myself, pushing back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "It's over, Jason. I'm leaving Derek for good this time." Without hesitation, he ushered me inside, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. As I clung to him, the weight of years of abuse finally lifting from my shoulders, I knew that this was just the beginning of my journey towards reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self-worth. And Derek and Gwen? They would soon learn the true meaning of karma, the consequences of their actions rippling outward like a tidal wave, sweeping away the foundations of their smug superiority. After recounting the years of abuse I had endured at the hands of Derek and Gwen, Jason and his wife Emma were furious. Emma's eyes blazed with anger as she pulled me into a tight hug. "That bastard," she spat. "How dare he treat you like that? You don't deserve any of this, Lila." Jason nodded in agreement, his jaw clenched. "We're going to make him pay for what he's done. You have our full support, sis." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, grateful for their unwavering support. With their help, I knew I could finally break free from Derek's toxic grip. Over the next few days, we hatched a plan. First, I contacted a divorce lawyer to begin the legal process of separating from Derek. The lawyer assured me that with the evidence of his abuse and financial misdeeds, I had a strong case for securing alimony and a sizable settlement. Next, we turned our attention to building a solid case against Derek. Jason and Emma helped me gather documentation of his gambling debts, his online rants, and any other evidence we could find to expose his true nature. "We need to hit him where it hurts," Emma said, her voice steely with determination. "That money-grubbing prick needs to learn that there are consequences for his actions." It was then that I remembered Derek's estranged aunt, May. She had always been critical of his behavior, and she held the keys to the family inheritance. If we could get her on our side, it would be a devastating blow to Derek and Gwen. I reached out to May, explaining the situation and pleading for her help. At first, she was hesitant, but as I revealed the depth of Derek's cruelty and Gwen's complicity, her resolve hardened. "That boy has always been a disappointment," she fumed, "and to think his mother enabled such despicable behavior? It's unforgivable." With May on board, our plan began to take shape. She agreed to withhold the inheritance from Derek and Gwen unless they made amends for their actions, essentially leaving them financially destitute. As the preparations continued, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment coursing through me. For years I had been the victim, cowering in fear and submission. But now the tables had turned, and it was my turn to dictate the terms of our engagement. Derek and Gwen had no idea what was coming, but they would soon learn the true price of their cruelty. With each step we took, I could feel the weight of their oppression lifting, replaced by a newfound strength and determination. This was more than just revenge, it was a reclamation of my dignity, a declaration that I would no longer be defined by their abuse. I was taking back control of my life, and nothing would stand in my way. As the plan solidified, I found myself growing more confident, more assertive. The old Lila, the meek and submissive doormat, was gone. In her place stood a woman emboldened, a warrior ready to fight for her rightful place in the world. And when the time came to confront Derek and Gwen, to unveil the truth and watch their carefully constructed facade crumble around them, I would savor every moment. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and I would be there to reap the bitter harvest, a testament to the power of resilience and the indomitable human spirit. A week after I left Derek, my phone rang. It was him, no doubt looking to smooth things over with empty promises and hollow apologies. I steeled myself before answering, determined not to let his manipulations sway me. "What do you want, Derek?" I asked, my voice firm. "Lila, listen," he began, his tone sickly sweet. "I think we've both said some things we didn't mean. Why don't you come back home, and we can work this out like adults?" I scoffed. "Work it out? You mean like how we've worked it out for the past few years, with you berating and belittling me at every turn?" "That's in the past," he insisted. "I've changed, I promise. Things will be different." I could practically hear the smugness dripping from his words, as if he expected me to come crawling back at the first sign of his supposed contrition. "Save it, Derek," I spat. "I'm not falling for your lies anymore. I want a divorce, and I'm not going to let you sweet-talk your way out of this." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when he spoke again, his voice was laced with barely contained fury. "Listen here, you ungrateful little wench. You're going to sign those divorce papers, and you're going to do it without causing any trouble. You got that?" I smiled, unfazed by his empty threats. "Or what, Derek? You'll insult me some more? Throw a tantrum like a petulant child? I'm not afraid of you anymore." He sputtered, caught off guard by my newfound defiance. "You'll regret this, Lila. Mark my words, I'll make your life a living hell." "I doubt that," I replied coolly. "In fact, I think it's going to be the other way around. You and your mother are going to pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation you've put me through." With that, I ended the call, a sense of triumph surging through me. The old Derek, with his empty bravado and hollow threats, no longer held any power over me. Over the next few days, Jason, Emma, May, and I finalized our plan. We gathered all the evidence we could find, from financial records to social media posts, painting a damning picture of Derek's misdeeds and Gwen's complicity. As the day of our confrontation approached, I could feel the anticipation building within me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to strip away their false bravado and expose them for the cruel, vile people they truly were. We rehearsed the confrontation, going over every detail with meticulous care. I practiced my lines, my body language, determined to project an aura of confidence and strength that would leave no room for doubt. Finally, the day arrived. I took a deep breath, steeling my nerves as I approached the house I had once called home. Even from the outside, I could sense an uneasy cleanliness, as if Derek had already moved on and brought his mistress in before our separation was finalized. As I stepped inside, the stale air hit me like a slap in the face, a reminder of the oppressive atmosphere that had once permeated these walls. But now the tables had turned, and it was my turn to dictate the terms of our engagement. Derek and Gwen sat in the living room, their expressions a mix of surprise and contempt. Before they could utter a word, I launched into my prepared speech, laying out the evidence of their cruelty and financial misdeeds with surgical precision. As I spoke, I could see the color drain from their faces, the realization of their impending downfall slowly sinking in. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, utterly blindsided by the depth of our preparations. And then, just as I was about to deliver the final blow, the front door opened and May stepped inside, her steely gaze sweeping over the room. "Hello, nephew," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "It seems we have much to discuss." The look on Derek and Gwen's faces as May entered the room was priceless. Their smug arrogance melted away, replaced by a mixture of fear and disbelief. They knew, in that moment, that the game was up. "Aunt May," Derek stammered, attempting to regain his composure. "What are you doing here?" May fixed him with a withering glare. "Don't play dumb with me, boy. I'm here because of the shameful way you've treated this poor woman." She gestured towards me, her lips pressed into a thin line. Gwen, never one to back down, tried to interject. "Now, May, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Derek and Lila are just going through a rough patch, that's all." "A rough patch?" May scoffed. "From what I've heard, this has been going on for years. Years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and outright cruelty." I watched as Derek's face contorted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. "Who have you been talking to? Lila's been filling your head with lies, trying to turn you against me." "Enough of your lies, Derek," I spat, stepping forward. "I have all the proof I need right here." I brandished a thick folder stuffed with documentation of his misdeeds. Gwen's eyes widened as she caught sight of the folder, and her complexion paled. "Derek, what have you done?" Before he could respond, I launched into my prepared speech, laying out the evidence of his gambling addiction, his financial mismanagement, and his vile online rants about me. With each word, I could see the confidence draining from their faces, replaced by a growing sense of dread. "And that's not all," I continued, my voice ringing out with newfound strength. "I have witnesses, people who can attest to the years of abuse I've endured at your hands." As if on cue, Jason and Emma entered the room, their expressions steely and resolute. They stood beside me, a united front against the crumbling facade of Derek and Gwen's lies. Derek's gaze darted from me to Jason, then back again, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Gwen, for once, was rendered speechless, her usual bravado nowhere to be found. It was at that moment that the front door opened once more, and a young woman stepped inside. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her, clearly not expecting such a confrontation. "Blake?" Derek croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman, Blake apparently, fixed him with a look of utter disgust. "You lied to me," she hissed. "You told me you were single, that you were ready for a committed relationship." Derek opened his mouth to respond, but May cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Don't bother, Derek. Your web of deceit has unraveled, and we've all seen the truth." She turned to Blake, her expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this mess, dear, but rest assured, my nephew and his mother will face the consequences of their actions." Blake nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I want nothing more to do with him," she spat, shooting Derek a venomous glare before storming out. The room fell silent, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. Derek and Gwen sat frozen, their carefully constructed facade of lies and deception crumbling around them, and as I looked at their stunned faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the scales of justice finally tipped in my favor. With a deep breath, I gathered my strength and delivered the final blow. "Derek, Gwen, your reign of terror is over. I'm suing for alimony and restitution, and I won't stop until you've paid for every ounce of suffering you've caused me." Their reactions were priceless, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and fear that left me savoring the sweet taste of revenge. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now they would reap the bitter harvest. As I turned and walked out the door, Jason and Emma by my side, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of oppression had been broken, and I was finally free. Free to live my life on my own terms, to embrace the future with courage and determination. And as for Derek and Gwen, their day of reckoning was just beginning. The aftermath of the confrontation was like a whirlwind, with events unfolding at a dizzying pace. As Blake stormed out, her face twisted with rage and betrayal, Derek made one last-ditch effort to salvage his crumbling lies. "You can't seriously believe her," he sneered, gesturing towards me. "She's just trying to turn everyone against me, to take me for everything I've got." I fixed him with a steely glare, unfazed by his pathetic attempts at manipulation. "Save your breath, Derek. The jig is up and you know it." Jason stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Don't even try it, man. We have more than enough evidence to bury you in court." "Evidence?" Gwen scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "What kind of evidence could you possibly have?" In response, I tossed the thick folder onto the coffee table, its contents spilling out in a cascade of damning documentation. Financial records, printouts of Derek's online rants, even photos and witness statements. It was all there, laid bare for them to see. Derek's face paled as he rifled through the papers, his hands trembling with barely contained fury. "Where did you get all this?" he demanded, his voice rising in pitch. "That's not important," May interjected, her tone stern. "What's important is that we now know the truth about your gambling addiction, your financial misdeeds, and your despicable treatment of Lila." Gwen opened her mouth to protest, but May silenced her with a withering glare. "Don't even try to defend him, Gwen. You're just as culpable in all this, enabling his behavior and joining in on the abuse." Derek's eyes darted around the room, searching for any shred of support or sympathy, but he found none, only the cold, hard reality of his lies and misdeeds laid bare before him. "You can't do this to me," he snarled, his fists clenched at his sides. "I'll fight this, every step of the way. You won't get a damn cent from me." I couldn't help but laugh at his empty bravado, his desperate attempts to cling to the illusion of power. "Oh, but we will, Derek. We'll take everything from you, just like you tried to take everything from me." Emma stepped forward, her expression one of steely determination. "We're not just going after you for alimony and restitution. We're going to make sure you face the full consequences of your actions, legally and financially." Derek's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from his body as the weight of our words sank in. He knew, in that moment, that he had lost, that his carefully constructed web of lies and deceit had finally unraveled, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. Gwen, ever the loyal enabler, tried one last time to defend her precious son. "This is outrageous," she spat. "You can't just come into our home and make these wild accusations." But May wasn't having it. She turned to her sister-in-law, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. "Enough, Gwen. Enough of your blind loyalty and willful ignorance. It ends here, today." With a heavy sigh, May reached into her purse and withdrew a thick envelope. "This is my last will and testament," she announced, her voice ringing out with finality. "And as of this moment, both you and Derek are hereby disinherited." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sharp intake of breath from Derek and Gwen. Their faces, once so smug and arrogant, now twisted into masks of disbelief and horror. "You can't do that," Derek sputtered, his voice weak and hollow. But May simply shook her head, her expression unyielding. "I can, and I have. Consider it the price you must pay for your cruelty and deceit." And just like that, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Derek and Gwen, stripped of their ill-gotten wealth and inheritance, were left to face the harsh reality of their actions. Their world, once so carefully constructed on a foundation of lies and manipulation, had crumbled to dust. As I looked at their defeated faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when justice was finally served, when the scales were balanced in my favor. And as I turned and walked away, leaving Derek and Gwen to wallow in the wreckage of their own making, I knew that this was just the beginning. The future was mine to shape, to mold into something beautiful and fulfilling, a future free from the shackles of their oppression. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, empowered by the knowledge that I had taken back control of my life. And as for Derek and Gwen, well, they would have plenty of time to reflect on the consequences of their actions, to learn the bitter lesson that karma has a way of evening the score. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval. True to my word, I pursued alimony and restitution from Derek with relentless determination, leaving no stone unturned in my quest for justice. With the mountains of evidence we had gathered, my lawyer made short work of Derek's feeble attempts at defense, his gambling debts, his online rants, and his emotional abuse. It was all laid bare for the court to see, painting a damning picture of his true character. Derek and Gwen, now disgraced and disinherited, could do little more than seethe in impotent rage as the legal system ground them down, stripping them of their ill-gotten wealth and privilege. With each court ruling in my favor, I could see the life draining from their eyes, the realization setting in that their reign of terror was truly at an end. And through it all, I stood tall and unwavering, bolstered by the support of Jason, Emma, and May. They were my rock, my foundation in the face of Derek and Gwen's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage their crumbling empire. "You'll regret this, Lila," Derek spat one day after a particularly devastating court ruling. "Mark my words, you'll never know peace as long as I'm breathing." I fixed him with a steely glare, his empty threats bouncing off me like water off a duck's back. "Save your breath, Derek. You've lost, and you know it. It's time you accepted the consequences of your actions." With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in his own impotent rage. His threats were hollow, his power stripped away by the weight of his own misdeeds. As the legal battles raged on, I found myself slowly shedding the shackles of my past, the weight of Derek and Gwen's oppression lifting from my shoulders. With each victory, each hard-won settlement or ruling in my favor, I felt a renewed sense of strength and determination, a fire burning within me that could not be extinguished. And as the dust finally settled, the final judgments handed down, I found myself in a position I never could have imagined. Financially secure, emotionally liberated, and finally free from the chains of my toxic marriage. Derek and Gwen, on the other hand, were left destitute and disgraced, their once lofty status crumbling around them like a house of cards. May had seen to it that they were evicted from the family home, left to fend for themselves in the harsh reality they had so callously inflicted upon others. As I stood in my new apartment, Surrounded by the trappings of my newfound independence, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. I had fought the good fight, weathered the storm of their cruelty, and emerged victorious, a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the power of resilience. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my career with renewed vigor, channeling my newfound confidence and determination into every aspect of my work. It wasn't long before my efforts were rewarded, and I found myself promoted to a senior position within the firm, a testament to my skills and dedication. But perhaps more importantly, I began to rediscover the parts of myself that had been suppressed for so long. My passions, my dreams, and my zest for life. I took up new hobbies, explored new interests, and surrounded myself with people who truly cared for me, who supported and uplifted me rather than tearing me down. And as for the prospect of a new relationship, well, I wasn't closing that door entirely. But this time I vowed to approach it with wisdom and discernment, never again allowing myself to be subjugated or diminished by another person's cruelty or insecurity. As I stood on the balcony of my apartment one evening, gazing out over the twinkling lights of the city, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey I had taken. From the depths of emotional and financial despair, I had risen like a phoenix from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. And in that moment, I made a silent vow, a vow to never again allow anyone to strip me of my dignity or self-worth. I was the master of my own destiny, the architect of my own future, and no one, not Derek, not Gwen, nor anyone else, could ever take that away from me again. With a deep breath and a smile on my face, I turned and went back inside, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with open arms and an unwavering spirit. The past was behind me, and the future lay ahead, brimming with possibilities and the promise of a life truly lived on my own terms. Mom, can we go to Aunt Rose's cabin this summer? I miss the animals and the open fields, Ellie said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I glanced at her from the kitchen sink, wiped my hands on a towel, and smiled. Of course, sweetheart. We'll go as soon as school is out. Ellie beamed, her face lighting up the room. Derek, my husband, sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up. Can't you two ever stay home? This cabin obsession is ridiculous. Derek, it's just a few weeks. Ellie loves it there, and so do I said, my voice calm but firm. Ellie, undeterred by her father's lack of enthusiasm, joined in. Yes, I can't wait to help Aunt Rose with the animals again. Derek sighed, tapping incessantly on his phone. Well, don't expect me to join. I've got too much work. Projects don't manage themselves. Fine, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We'll manage without you. His eyes finally met mine, a flicker of frustration surfacing. Just make sure you stay reachable. I don't want the same issue as last time. I nodded, turning back to Ellie. Start packing your things, kiddo. We leave Saturday morning. Ellie dashed out of the room, her excitement palpable. Derek pushed his chair back noisily, the legs scraping against the floor. Anyway, I'm heading out. Got a late meeting, he muttered, picking up his briefcase. Still clutching the towel, I watched him walk towards the door. Don't wait up, he added before leaving without a second glance. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence that felt heavier than it should have. Saturday arrived swiftly. The drive to Rose's cabin was long but peaceful. Ellie sang along to her favorite songs as we navigated through winding roads and lush forests. When we finally pulled up to the cabin, Rose was already outside, waving enthusiastically. Aunt Rose, Ellie hollered, leaping out of the car and sprinting towards her. Rose caught her in a big hug, laughing heartily. Look at you, you've grown since I last saw you, Rose exclaimed, ruffling Ellie's hair. I joined them, giving Rose a tight hug. It's good to be here, I admitted, breathing in the crisp mountain air. Come on in. Maxwell's inside making lunch, Rose said, guiding us towards the door. Inside, the cabin smelled like home. Fresh bread, herbs, and a hint of something sweet. Maxwell, Rose's husband, greeted us with his apron on, brandishing a spatula like a knight with his sword. Ladies, welcome back. Ready for some homemade lasagna? He asked, grinning widely. As we settled in, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, the opposite of the tension back at home. Ellie quickly got busy helping Rose feed the animals while I unpacked. That evening, we all sat around the dinner table, the warm glow of the cabin's light casting cozy shadows. Ellie chatted with Rose and Maxwell about school, her friends, and excitement for summer. Rose glanced at me, her eyes silently asking how things were. I gave her a small nod, indicating we'd talk later. Later that night, while Ellie slept soundly in the loft, Rose and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. "So, how's Derek?" Rose asked cautiously. "Working as usual," I replied, taking a sip from my mug. "Things aren't great, Rose. He's distant, always working or on his phone," Rose sighed. "I see. And you? How are you holding up?" "One day at a time," I said, forcing a smile. "But being here helps. It's like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation." Rose reached over and squeezed my hand. "Remember, you always have us. This place is as much yours as it is ours." The weight of her words settled over me, filling me with a sense of hope and strength I hadn't felt in a while. Watching the stars twinkle above, I allowed myself to imagine a future, one where Ellie and I found true happiness, even if that meant breaking away from Derek's oppressive indifference. Sunday morning at the cabin started with the sounds of roosters crowing and cows mooing. Ellie was already up and about, helping Rose with the morning chores. I could hear her giggles drifting through the open window as I slowly woke up, appreciating the quiet bustle of the farm. I grabbed a cup of coffee and walked outside to join them. Ellie was brushing one of the horses, her face aglow with happiness. Rose gave me a knowing smile from the chicken coop. "Morning, sis. Ready to dive into farm life?" she teased, scattering feed for the clucking chickens. "I'm ready," I answered, taking a sip of my coffee and feeling more at peace than I had in months. Entering the barn, I noticed the walls covered with old family photos and memorabilia. One picture showed Rose and me as kids, sitting on the same horse Ellie was now brushing. This place was full of history and life, everything my suburban home wasn't. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a message from Derek. "Where are the files I asked for? This is urgent," I replied quickly, hands trembling slightly. "I sent them last night. Did you check your email?" His reply came swiftly. "Check again. They're not there. Why can't you do anything, right?" Rose must have seen the tension on my face. She walked over, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Is it Derek?" "Yeah, he's on about work, as usual," I sighed, pocketing my phone. Rose raised an eyebrow. "He should know you're on break. Doesn't he try to grasp family time at all?" I shook my head, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. "Let's not talk about him right now. What's next on our farm to-do list?" By the afternoon, Maxwell and Ellie had convinced me to join them in the fields to check on the crops. I watched as Ellie ran happily between the rows, her hair catching the golden light. This was what freedom felt like. Maxwell handed me a basket. "Think you can handle picking tomatoes?" "I think I can manage," I replied with a smile, bending down to start picking the ripe, red fruits. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed again, but this time I ignored it, focusing instead on the weight of the tomatoes in my hand and the richness of the soil beneath my feet. Later that day, Derek called. His voice was sharp, cutting through the serenity of the farm like a knife. "Why didn't you respond to my texts? What's so important there that you can't manage a simple email?" "We're busy here, Derek. It's good for Ellie to be outside, you know?" I answered, trying to keep my tone even. "She needs stability, not to be dragged off to the middle of nowhere," he retorted. I turned away from the house, looking out at the rolling fields. "She's stable here, happier than she's been in a long time." A heavy silence hung on the line before Derek spoke again, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well, enjoy playing farmer. Don't count on me rescuing you when this little fantasy falls apart." As the call ended, I felt a wave of emotion swell inside me. Anger, frustration, and a fierce protectiveness towards Ellie and our time at the cabin. Rose came up behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Hey, everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just Derek being Derek." Rose nodded knowingly. "He'll never understand this life, but that's his loss, not ours." Looking around at the calm and beauty surrounding us, I realized Rose was right. Derek might never get it, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Here in the mountains, I felt a sense of clarity and strength. A place where our lives could be rebuilt, one simple, fulfilling day at a time. We had been at Rose's cabin for a little over a week when Ellie came rushing in with wide eyes. "Mom, I saw a fox near the chicken coop. He was trying to get in." Rose looked up from the kitchen table, concern etched on her face. A fox, that's not good. We need to secure the coop better. Ellie nodded earnestly. Can we build something to protect the chickens? Rose smiled. Sure thing, we can make a stronger fence and set up some lights to scare it away. I was getting coffee when an idea hit me. Actually, I read about a new eco-friendly project at work. It uses renewable energy to create deterrents for predators. Maybe we could apply that to the farm. Really, Mom? That sounds cool. Ellie's eyes sparkled with renewed excitement. Rose got up, intrigued. Tell me more about it. I explained the concept, feeling a surge of enthusiasm. It's an ecotech project. It's solar-powered lights and sounds to keep predators away without harming them. I could talk to my boss and see if we could test it out here. Maxwell chimed in from the doorway. Sounds like a great idea. Anything to keep the chickens safe and maybe even make things more sustainable around here. A few days later, I broached the project idea with my boss during a video call. I was thinking maybe we could pilot our ecotech project at my sister's farm. It's perfect for testing renewable energy solutions. My boss, a middle-aged man with a kind face, nodded thoughtfully. That's an interesting proposal, Hannah. If it works, it could be a great case study. Go ahead and draft a plan, and we'll review it. I felt a jolt of excitement as I hung up the call. Ellie had overheard the conversation and came running. Mom, are we really going to help Aunt Rose with your project? Yes, Ellie. If it gets approved, it'll be a great help to the farm. That night, I couldn't help but share the news with Derek, hoping for a small sign of encouragement. I talked to my boss about the eco project. He's interested. We might get to pilot it here. Derek snorted. You're really planning to dig in the dirt now? How ambitious. I clenched my teeth, trying to keep calm. It's not about dirt. It's about making a difference, using what I know to help my family. He scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. Just make sure you don't mess it up. I can't have you falling behind at work because of this ridiculous farm fantasy. I hung up, feeling a mix of anger and determination. Derek's words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. This project wasn't just about the farm. It was a chance to show him and myself what I was capable of. After that call, Rose found me sitting on the porch, looking out at the darkened fields. Rough conversation? I nodded. Derek doesn't believe I can do it, but I need to prove him wrong for Ellie's sake and mine. Rose sat down beside me, her presence comforting. You've got this, Hannah. Whatever you need, we're here to support you. Hearing those words gave me the strength to push forward. I went back inside, ready to start drafting a detailed plan for the ecotech project. As the days went by, I poured myself into the proposal, detailing every step and potential outcome. Each part of the plan felt like one more way to break free from Derek's toxic grip, to create a better future for Ellie and me. Finally, I submitted the plan to my boss. Now, all that was left was to wait for approval. But deep down, I knew I was already moving forward. Here at the cabin, we had started something real, something that could change everything. The sun was setting when Ellie wandered into the living room, her face thoughtful. Mom, I saw Daddy with a lady today. I glanced up from my laptop, my heart skipping a beat. What do you mean, sweetie? While we were driving back from town, he was at a cafe with a lady. They were holding hands. The room seemed to close in around me. Rose, sitting nearby, caught my eye. She looked as shocked as I felt. Did you recognize her? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ellie shook her head. No, but they looked very friendly. I nodded slowly, masking my emotions. Thanks for telling me, Ellie. Matt, why don't you go finish your homework? Once Ellie had left the room, Rose leaned in, concerned. What do you think is going on, Hannah? I exhaled deeply. I don't know, but it's time I found out for sure. The next day, I decided to call a private investigator. The idea of an affair had tormented me before, but Ellie's observation pushed me to act. I listed all the details I knew, feeling a mix of dread and determination. As days went by, I fell into a routine at the cabin, masking my anxiety with work on the eco project. Then the investigator called. Hannah, I have some information. Derek's been meeting a woman regularly. I have photos and messages. My stomach churned, but I steadied myself. Send me everything. The evidence came through email, a series of incriminating photos, clearly showing Derek and a woman at various places. My hands shook as I clicked on the messages, reading his flirtatious and deceitful words. With a deep breath, I called Derek. "We need to talk." He sighed loudly. "What now, Hannah?" "I know about her. I've seen the messages and the photos." There was a pause before he responded, aggravation dripping from his voice. "So what? Was it your little detective act that uncovered this? You were never here anyway, always off playing farmer." I clenched my fists, the anger building. "I was here for our daughter and our family. You're the one who shirked responsibility." His laugh was cold and unfeeling. "Responsibility, right? Look, don't pretend you're some saint. Enjoy your cabin life while it lasts." I could hear the contempt in his words, but it only steeled my resolve. "Derek, I'm done. I deserve better. Ellie deserves better. I'm starting divorce proceedings." Silence lingered before he spoke, voice rigid with controlled rage. "Fine, do whatever you think you have to, but don't expect this to be easy." Hanging up, I felt a strange relief wash over me. It was time to move forward, free from his deceit and toxic presence. I found Rose in the garden, her hands deep in the soil. "How did it go?" she asked, wiping dirt off her hands. "I told him it's over," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm going to start the proceedings. It's time, for me and for Ellie." Rose stood and hugged me. "Good for you, Hannah. We'll do this together." As the days passed, I started gathering everything needed for the legal battle ahead. The cabin felt more like home with each passing day, a place where Ellie and I could build a new life, one honest step at a time. With support from Rose and Maxwell, I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered. Our new beginning was within reach, firmly rooted in the love and strength of family. I stepped into the lawyer's office, my heart pounding. A young assistant guided me to a sleek conference room where a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a confident smile greeted me. "Ms. Anderson, I'm Karen Mitchell. Please, sit down," she said, extending her hand. Shaking her hand, I sat down. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Karen leaned forward, her demeanor professional yet warm. "Let's get straight to it. You've decided to file for divorce. Tell me everything." I recounted the recent events, culminating with Derek's blatant admission of infidelity. Karen took notes, nodding occasionally. "We need to gather all possible evidence of his misconduct. This will strengthen your case, especially concerning alimony and child support." A sudden thought struck me. Derek's former colleague, Karen, might help. She's openly despised him since he mishandled a project that cost her a promotion. Karen arched an eyebrow. "Do you think she'd testify against him?" "I believe she would. She's got no love lost for Derek." Karen smiled. "Good. I'll contact her." Leaving the office, I felt the first flickers of hope. I was taking steps, concrete steps, towards a better future for Ellie and me. The sense of forward movement was empowering. Back at the cabin, Ellie met me at the door. "Mom, how did it go?" I knelt down, hugging her tightly. "We're making progress, Ellie. We're going to be okay." A few days later, Karen, Derek's former colleague, agreed to meet us at a local cafe. She was a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, her eyes sharp and assessing. "So, Derek finally screwed up enough for you to leave him, huh?" Karen said, sipping her coffee. I nodded, feeling a pang of hurt at the bluntness. "He's been having an affair. I need to prove his irresponsibility, especially financially." Karen leaned in slightly. "Believe me, I've got dirt on Derek. He's been fudging accounts and embezzling funds." My stomach turned. "Can you prove this?" Karen gave a wicked smile. "I've got emails, transaction records, the works. I've been saving them for an occasion exactly like this." Later, I shared the news with Rose and Maxwell at the dinner table. Ellie was at her friend's house, so it was just the three of us. "Karen's going to help. She has proof Derek's been embezzling," I said. Rose's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Embezzling? That changes everything." Maxwell nodded. "If he's guilty of fraud, we've got leverage. He can't brush this off or bully you into submission." Armed with Karen's evidence, I felt more prepared than ever. The next week dragged by in a blur of legal preparations and emotional turmoil. Finally, the day of confrontation arrived. Derek showed up at the lawyer's office, his expression a mix of anger and defiance. "What's this about, Hannah? More baseless accusations?" I stood tall, Karen by my side. "No, Derek, this is about your fraudulent activities and how you've wronged our family." The color drained from his face, disbelief and rage battling for dominance. "You're bluffing," he spat. Karen laid out the evidence calmly, piece by piece. Derek's facade crumbled as he realized the gravity of his situation. "This is insane. You can't trust her. She's lying." Karen looked unperturbed. "The court will decide that, Mr. Anderson." I watched Derek, his composure shattering, revealing the scared, selfish man beneath. "What do you want?" he finally muttered, beaten. "I want a fair divorce settlement, full custody of Ellie, and alimony," I stated firmly. Derek's eyes were cold, but he knew there was no escape. "Fine, take what you want, just get out of my life." As I walked out of the office, a mixture of relief and resolve flooded me. Rose and Maxwell were waiting outside, their faces alight with anticipation. "It's over?" I told them, my voice steady. "We've won the first battle." Rose hugged me tightly. "You did it, Hannah. Now it's time for the next chapter." Maxwell clapped me on the back. "Onwards and upwards, sister." With their support and the evidence in our favor, the future began to glow with promise. It was time to build a new life, one where Ellie and I could truly thrive. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers as I took my seat next to Karen. Derek's attorney, a grizzled man with a stern face, shuffled papers at the opposite table. Derek sat beside him, glaring at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Karen leaned over, her voice low but reassuring. "Stick to the facts. We have all the evidence we need." The judge, a stern-looking man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, banged his gavel. "Court is now in session for the case of Anderson versus Anderson." Derek's lawyer stood up first, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "Your Honor, we contend that Mrs. Anderson is exaggerating claims of misconduct to gain an unfair advantage in the divorce settlement." I felt a surge of anger, but Karen squeezed my arm subtly, grounding me. When it was our turn, Karen presented the evidence methodically, starting with Derek's infidelity. "Your Honor, here are messages proving Mr. Anderson's affair," she said, handing the judge a folder. The judge glanced over the papers, then looked at Derek. "Mr. Anderson, do you deny the validity of these messages?" Derek remained silent, his face a mix of defiance and fear. Next, Karen presented the evidence of embezzlement. She displayed emails, bank statements, and transaction records, each a nail in Derek's coffin. This evidence clearly highlights Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities, which have compromised not only his marriage, but also his professional integrity, Karen stated firmly. Derek's lawyer attempted to object, but the judge silenced him with a wave of his hand. "Mr. Anderson, do you have any defense for these claims?" Derek stood up, his facade crumbling. "These are lies, fabrications to ruin me." The judge's gaze was cold. "The evidence speaks loud and clear, Mr. Anderson." Karen shot me a supportive glance. It was time for the final blow. Karen stood up. "Your Honor, we ask for full custody of Ellie Anderson, alimony, and that Mr. Anderson be held accountable for his fraudulent actions." Derek exploded. "This is a setup. She's turning my daughter against me." The judge banged his gavel again, bringing order to the chaos. "Mr. Anderson, enough. I will review the evidence and issue a ruling shortly." We left the courtroom to wait for the judge's decision, my nerves stretched thin. Rose and Maxwell arrived, bringing comfort and moral support. Finally, the judge called us back in. As everyone settled, he looked straight at Derek, his voice firm. "Based on the overwhelming evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, this court grants Mrs. Anderson full custody of Ellie Anderson, as well as alimony and child support. Furthermore, I am referring Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities to the appropriate authorities." Derek's face turned white, then red with fury. "This is a witch hunt," he screamed. "You can't do this to me." Karen stood up, unflappable. "Justice has been served, Mr. Anderson." The judge banged his gavel one last time. "Court is adjourned." As we filed out, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Rose hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with tears of relief. "It's finally over, Hannah. You did it." Ellie, who had been waiting with Maxwell in the hallway, ran up to me. "Mom, are we really away from Dad now?" I picked her up, holding her close. "Yes, sweetheart, we're free." Maxwell clapped me on the back. "Time to start that new chapter, huh?" I nodded, my heart swelling with hope. With Derek facing legal consequences and having lost the fight, the path was clear. Karen shook my hand warmly. "You were strong through this, Hannah. Now, go make that new life you deserve." As we left the courthouse, I felt a sense of renewal. The battle had been fierce, but we had emerged victorious. The road ahead was bright and open, ready for us to walk it together as a family. Weeks after the court's ruling, the news about Derek's financial misconduct spread like wildfire. His once commanding presence at work was reduced to whispers and suspicious glances. One afternoon, Karen called me. "Hannah, have you seen the news?" "No, why?" I asked, sensing something significant. "Derek's been fired. The board found out about his embezzlement. They've terminated his contract." I felt a rush of satisfaction. "He's really facing the consequences now," Karen chuckled. "It's far from over. He's being investigated by the authorities for fraud. He won't be getting away with anything." At home, Rose and I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Later that evening, Ellie and I sat on the porch, the sky painted with the hues of sunset. "Mom, will Daddy be okay?" she asked softly. I looked at her, choosing my words carefully. "He made bad choices, sweetie. Now he has to face the music. But you and I, we're safe, and that's what matters." News outlets soon picked up Derek's story, his name plastered with accusations and scandal. One day Karen called again, sounding triumphant. "Hannah, the judge ruled that Derek must pay full child support and alimony. They've frozen his assets to cover it." I felt a mix of relief and triumph. "Thank you, Karen. You've been incredible through all this." "My pleasure, Hannah. Now go enjoy your life." The following weeks brought more signs of Derek's downfall. He tried to contact me several times, but I ignored his calls. One evening, I finally picked up, anticipating his outrage. "You've ruined my life, Hannah." Derek's voice was a blend of anger and desperation. "You did this to yourself, Derek," I replied evenly. "You made your choices. Now live with them." "Do you think you're so perfect? You're just hiding on that stupid farm, pretending everything's okay," he sneered. I took a deep breath, holding back a retort. "Ellie and I are happy, Derek. We're moving on, and you should do the same." Slamming the phone down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Derek's words couldn't hurt us anymore. A few days later, Rose came rushing into the cabin with the newspaper. "Hannah, look at this!" The headline read, "Former executive faces jail time for fraud." The article detailed Derek's impending court dates and the serious charges against him. Maxwell clapped his hands, grinning. "Looks like karma finally caught up with him." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of closure. "It's over, really over." Ellie joined us, her face curious. "What's going on?" I hugged her tightly. "Nothing to worry about, sweetie. Just some old news. We're free now." Ellie's smile reaffirmed what I felt inside. The shadow Derek had cast over our lives was gone. We could now embrace the future without looking back. As Derek's life unraveled, ours blossomed. The ecotech project at the farm began to thrive, bringing new energy and purpose. Ellie adapted to her new school, making friends and finding joy in the simple pleasures of one evening. As we finished dinner, Ellie looked at me with excitement. "Mom, can we invite my friends over to see the farm? They'd love it here." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "Of course, Ellie. This is our home, and we should share it." Rose and Maxwell nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting the sentiment. With each passing day, the cabin felt more like home, a place of healing and growth. As the sun set on our past struggles, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever future awaited us, brimming with newfound strength and hope. The final court ruling had made it clear Derek had lost everything. Seeing the news, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. But my focus now was entirely on building a new life for Ellie and myself. We officially moved into Rose's cabin. The small space felt cozy and welcoming, filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of laughter, elements drastically missing from our old home. Ellie thrived, her once anxious demeanor replaced by a radiant smile. One crisp morning, as we sipped our coffee on the porch, Rose turned to me. "Guess what? The ecotech project got mentioned in the local paper again. They're calling it a model for sustainable farming." "That's fantastic news, Rose," I exclaimed, feeling immense pride and relief. That afternoon, Ellie had her friends over. They fed the chickens, ran through the fields, and took turns on the tire swing. Their laughter echoed, filling the space with youthful joy. "Mom, I love it here," Ellie said, throwing her arms around me. "I never want to leave." "I'm glad, Ellie. This is our home now," I replied, hugging her back tightly. Meanwhile, Derek took every opportunity to try disrupting our peace. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, my phone buzzed with a message. "Derek again?" Rose asked, seeing my face tense. "Let's see." I opened the message. Derek had somehow found out about our success with the ecotech project. Enjoy your little success while it lasts. You're nothing without me, his text read. I rolled my eyes, showing it to Rose and Maxwell. He's desperate, Maxwell remarked. Ignore him. Agreed. Rose said, he's just trying to rattle you. I nodded, blocking his number. He can't touch us now. We're stronger than he thinks. Over the next months, Derek's situation worsened. He lost his house and friends, his reputation in tatters. Occasionally, I'd hear bits of news about his struggles, but I remained focused on our new life. His downfall was a testament to the karma that had finally caught up with him. One morning, we were interrupted by an unexpected knock at the door. Karen stood there, looking pleased. Good news, she announced. Derek's been sentenced to prison for fraud. The chapter is truly closed. A rush of relief swept over me. Thank you, Karen, for everything. You earned this, Hannah, she replied. Now, live your best life. As Karen left, Rose clapped her hands, gathering everyone outside. This calls for a celebration. We spent the day enjoying an impromptu barbecue, Ellie playing with her friends and Maxwell strumming his guitar. The air was filled with laughter and music, a sharp contrast to the struggle and pain we'd endured. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ellie snuggled up beside me, her eyes reflecting the twinkling stars. Mom, I'm so glad we're here. I feel free, she said softly. I kissed her forehead. Me too, Ellie. We're exactly where we belong. That night, as everyone settled into the cabin, I took a moment to step outside. The sky was clear and the stars shone brightly. I breathed in the fresh mountain air, feeling the weight of the past lift completely. Our new beginning wasn't without its challenges, but it was filled with hope and endless possibilities. Here, surrounded by family and nature, we had found our sanctuary. And as Derek faced the consequences of his actions, I felt a deep sense of justice. This life, this freedom, was the karma he could never touch. For Ellie and me, it was a testament to our resilience and a promise of a brighter future.